across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, hello there. Good evening. Here I am again in the weird time of the schedule. I say weird because I keep finding every time I'm doing this later shift that, I don't know, I just get a bit unhinged. Things don't always go as planned and we start talking about Lord knows what. So strap yourself in because there is a sumptuous feast of current affairs and news on the menu. But then after that, who knows? Let's see where the night takes us, shall we? We are going to be discussing, well, I was just saying, it's Kev then, the fact that reform seems to have gotten a bit litigious. They're now threatening to sue Kemi Badenoch over the Suella mental health claim. They reported the clearly doctored, fairly disgraceful clip of Matt Goodwin in Manchester, the Labour Party did, that circulated on social media. If you haven't seen it, don't worry. But they reported that to the police. I remember in sort of the Rupert Lowe era, they were always on the blower to the cop shop. I'm like, just calm down. It's politics, okay? Like, just... it's politics. The Labour Party have not showered themselves in glory by doctoring a Matt Goodwin speech and pretending that he was saying he hated Manchester. And so they've received a huge amount of opprobrium from the general public, quite rightly so. So you don't need to do anything else, do you? And similar with Kemi Badenoch saying that Suella Braverman was unhappy. I mean... right, so she got it in the neck for that. There's been a huge amount of criticism over the Conservative Party. It backfired. So it's just calm down, mate. Like, you know, get the lawyers working on leaving the ECHR or something instead. Seriously. We are going to be discussing that. We're going to be discussing the Prime Minister in China. China! Oh, he's gone home. He loves it. Honestly, the man is looking so happy to be there. Can we just say, you don't need to come back, lad. You just stay there, son. We are going to be talking as well to the brilliant Tom Tugendhat. He's written a very excellent piece in The Telegraph today about his time in Afghanistan and how our Prime Minister's legislating to essentially witch hunt our armed forces made it very difficult on the ground. And I just want to point out, as I did yesterday, why is he still our Prime Minister? The Labour Party were the ones who sent those men and women to Iraq and Afghanistan on dubious legal footing. But if you're a serviceman or woman, you have to go where you're sent. You have to obey commands. And then Starmer has the audacity to try and persecute our armed forces who bravely served over there. The man has never gone anywhere near any form of disturbance, has he? Does he not understand? A war is a war. That you can't be sitting there getting your blimmin' legal aid on the phone going, is it okay if I still continue to ask this man from the Taliban some questions, please? I mean, Boris Johnson was forced to resign because he ate a piece of cake when the sun was over the yardarm in a room that he'd spent the whole day with, based upon some pretty flimsy rubbish COVID legislation at the time. Starmer, our Prime Minister, is gallivanting the place, selling off our assets to foreign countries, going over to China, who's basically giving Russia all of its arms to fight the Ukrainians while we pretend we're helping the other side. Chasing down our military, trying to change the law so they can't actually defend themselves or do what's need to be done in the theatre of conflict. The man is not just a liability. The man is an enemy of this state. The man's and most of his cabinet are committing acts of what I can only describe as national terrorism or sabotage against us. I mean, I just don't... seriously. There's got to be that should have got him out. Anyway, and then Westminster Council. When I used to live in Westminster, it was great. It was run by the Conservatives. It had a really low level of council tax. The streets were really clean. It was just a great borough to live in. That is going back some time, mind. Then the Labour Party happened to win it, didn't they? What do? Oh, the Ramadan lights go up, the tent cities happen, and now all of a sudden they've decided they're going to be a sanctuary city for migrants. Oh, not any old migrants, migrants from the global majority. How the greatest, tiniest little part of the UK has fallen so sadly. That really gets on my goat. We're going to be discussing Trump and Iran, lots of geopolitics, how there's basically no one left in prison because they've all been released. On it goes. Dystopia, 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 dystopia. But to cheer us up at the end of the show, in the weird half hour where we just, I don't know, chew the cud, shoot the breeze, talk about all the sorts of weird things that might just crop up in a normal rambling conversation down the pub, we're going to be joined by the gorgeous, gifted, glorious and glamorous Samara Gill. I know, you're looking forward to that. Not as much as me, though, because I love that woman, and we haven't actually seen each other for a while, because she was off in Australia over Christmas, and I was off in Egypt, and I've been pining for her, quite frankly. So I said a little prayer, and I have her for a whole hour. And don't tell anyone, when we come off air, we're going out. That's right, we're going to go tear it up. Of course, under the watchful eye of Dean, who is the biggest drinker on planet Earth, my producer, who's actually managed to put a show together today because I don't think he's been down to the pub yet. So hurrah! We've got lots, therefore, to talk about. If you want to join the conversation, the number is 03444991000. Should I read that as 03444991000? I don't know why I do the 0344499. Or should it be 0? Interesting. 03444991000. You can send a WhatsApp on that as well. Leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. If you'd rather send a text message, it's 87222. Oh, I did the treble there. Write the word talk before you text. We are on X at talkTV. I know, blast from the past. We should just be called Talk now, but that handle, I'm afraid, is set in stone. But do interact with us online. We love to hear your thoughts and your feelings. Right, let's kick things off with the political news. We're joined by Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, Philip Kisserly. Hi, Phil. How you doing?
Hi, Alex. It's so great to see you. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has. Look at that glorious bookcase. Ooh.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, you got that thing done right, didn't you, during COVID?
Well, actually, I'm going to use this opportunity to plug what's coming soon in June, at the beginning of June. There'll be more details later, but it is the New Culture Forum NCF Lit Fest, our second literary festival. We had one last year. It was amazing. It was in Westminster. It was superb. As you can see, I'm obsessed with books. I'm obsessed with detective fiction, spy fiction, very blokey type stuff. It won't. It'll be much more political, but we'll be doing that at the beginning of June. More details soon.
Nice. I'm glad you're doing that, actually, because I used to go to the Cheltenham Literary Festival because, you know, I'm from that part of the world, and it's just become so woke now. Sorry, it's sponsored by the Times and they're downstairs, but it has. It's just like, you know, they always dig out Dominic Grieve to do a Q&A, and it's all intersectionality. I assume, therefore, considering you're doing a literature festival, that your guest of honour will be the woman who's written the book saying Shakespeare was a black Jewish lady.
Well, if only we could get her, it would be wonderful, because our audience would really, really, really like to have a go at her. So, but I think somehow she might give us a swerve. But there'll be loads of other stuff. There will be no cancellations. There'll be no nonsense. There'll be no silliness, no egos. It's just going to be great, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that too. Bringing literature back into the sensible world again. Talking about the sensible world, do you think reform in Planet Sensible World, threatening to sue Kemi Badenoch over the claims she made about Suella Braverman's mental health? I mean, because this is where the Tory spokesman, when Braverman, both of them said Badenoch, Braverman. I mean, they've both got those confusing A's at the start of their name. But when she defected to Reform, a Tory spokesman said the party did all we could to look after Suella's mental health, but she was clearly very unhappy. I mean, is that really worth some sort of litigation?
No, it's not. They got a real pasting for that, didn't they? Online, in social media, from the public. They made themselves look absolutely stupid. And that's all they need. What reform shouldn't be doing is jumping in with being lawyered up to the hilt, and being a bit silly about it, actually, and a bit snowflakey and a bit daft, and setting themselves up for a fall, as they have done with the Labour Party and the Greater Manchester Police, because the Greater Manchester Police have just said, oh, well, there's nothing here, you're wasting our time, this is a bit silly. Now, they got all of that goodwill because I think Matt had played it really, really well, because he's doing brilliantly there in Gorton and Denton. And people just thought the government were just stupid and couldn't believe that they'd stooped to such ridiculous depths. I could believe it because I see it every day. But the people who aren't following them on a daily basis, we do, couldn't believe that they would stoop to such stupidness and such desperation. But they did. And now it feels like Reform are just throwing a little bit of that goodwill away. They're winning. They're miles ahead. Don't mess it up. Having said that, Alex, I think they've been brilliant in Gorton today. I think Matt's been out and about. He's been knocking on doors, and people have been saying, "Well, no one's been knocking on doors. No one's done this for 20 odd years. You know, the Labour Party never ever do this." So I think they should just stick to the politics, stick to what they're good at, stick to what Matt's good at.
This is the thing. I think, the way I see it is twofold, really. First of all, I think there could well be circumstances when there's a live election that you're in the purdah period and people aren't playing fair and doing things that will deliberately mislead the voter. And in those circumstances, you are absolutely right as a political party to seek a legal challenge or to report somebody for electoral fraud or whatever it may be. Because if an election result is going to be drastically undermined by somebody who's not basically colouring in between the lines, then fine, we want to protect democracy. And I wouldn't be surprised if Reform have good reason in the future to have to take legal action against either political parties or affiliated organisations and individuals. So doing this, you end up in a boy cried wolf situation, don't you? Where it's like, oh, here we go. They've phoned the police, they've spoken to the lawyers again. But also, it's very much, I'd say, quite a Trumpian American thing to do, this litigiousness. But again, I think Donald Trump has far more reason to go about his business like that than Reform do. Because first of all, America's a far more litigious society than we are, and I don't want to import that over here, frankly speaking. We've got enough problems with the ECHR and being sent to prison for tweets and stuff without suing everybody on top of it for, I don't know, mispronouncing a name or something. But the attacks on Donald Trump were horrendous. Some of the things he was being accused of, some of the names he was called, and the lawfare against him. But Reform gets a very hard time, and I think more so than any other party, but it's not harming them. It's not actually, as far as I can tell, turning people off them. And it is nowhere on the scale of the severity of the attacks that have been against Donald Trump. And I just think with this, politics is a rough and tumble, and Nigel's been through this for 30 years. I used to be by his side as his right-hand woman back in, sort of 2013, 2014, 2015. And he was called every name under the sun just for saying, oh, Britain should run its own affairs or Britain should control immigration. Things that now are said by the Labour Party or by, whomever. So he's never been thin-skinned, and I don't know where this has come from, this sort of, oh, we better get on the phone to somebody. And I wonder if it's sort of new characters in the party who think that this is what they might do in business, sharp-elbowed in the city, in dot-com world or whatever. No, but it's not very political. It's not politically wise.
No, it's really not. And the point is, people identify with Reform as being under attack all the time, because the kind of people that are voting for them are the kind of people that are shut down, called racist for being patriotic, not allowed to speak at work. They're going to get in trouble for posting something on Facebook or posting something on Twitter. So they really respond to a really good, strong reaction to that, which is saying, no, we're not going to bother with all this stuff. We're not even going to dignify it with a response half the time. or if we do, it's a clever put down. It's all of that kind of stuff. But I think you're absolutely right in looking ahead and seeing problems further ahead. And I'm thinking, I know a little bit about Manchester. I'm from there, and I've been following this story very, very closely. I think what's going to happen in Gorton and Denton is that there is going to be real sectarian politicking. Islamism is going to play a real role here, and you're going to see that possibly through the Green Party, but you can imagine characters like George Galloway trotting up and shoving his oar in and all of that kind of thing. It's then, because we saw it with Rochdale, one of the like towns, that's when we're really going to need lawfare and a sense of fair play. All this is muddying the water. I think you're absolutely right.
Totally. Do you know, I've said exactly the same thing. I'm not sure if the Green Party selected their candidate yet. Either way, if it is the deputy leader, Mothin Ali, and all the sort of Muslim vote organisations get behind him, then you're right. It is going to become an extremely ugly by-election, because it will be those who basically support, like you said, sectarian politics, the Muslim vote versus the we need to control our borders vote. And it will get ugly. And where we have seen such battles take place politically before in boroughs of London and constituencies dotted around the UK, there have been prosecuted cases of electoral fraud. Because very often, I'm afraid to say, in these communities, they have imported some of the dirty political practices from back at home into the United Kingdom. And so I think that if it does come down to this, if it is that, as we both think it could end up being, there'll probably be a huge problem with postal votes. So save your arsenal for that moment. But also, you know, you become a hostage to fortune in politics if you say something and then 6 months later all of a sudden you seem to be contradicting yourself. Now, this has happened with some of the defectors and people saying, well, you know, there's always a tweet, and I think most of us are happy to just sort of brush that aside and go, okay, you know, it is political to slag off the opposition, and then when they come to you, all of a sudden you pretend you never said that. Okay, that happens. But if you start getting prickly against the sort of messaging or the criticism that other political parties are putting out against you, and then you pretend you're the bastion of free speech and are saying people shouldn't be sent to prison for something they've posted online, you're making it very difficult, actually, to have a leg to stand on when it comes to that stuff.
You really can't be holier than thou. And I think if there's one thing that reform voters really, really detest, and I think you can go with Advance UK, and I think you can go with Rupert as well, it's that they do not like that. They do not like this prissy kind of, oh, well, you're going to get in trouble now because you've said something. So I really beg that they do not go down this road. And if they're watching this or if they're listening to us, you know, really don't do that. But I think this by-election is so important because in a way it's going to give us a window into the future, isn't it? We talked about sectarianism, and I think this, you know, it's so important that reform, I tweeted about this, it's so incredibly important that reform win this election, because I think Manchester is really on the brink of falling into the abyss. I mean, it's riven with identity politics and Islamism. So the identitarians, the woke posh people in the city centre and in places like Prestwich and Chorlton and Didsbury, those places that viewers from around there will know, all of those posh people, they are facilitating the Islamism in the satellite towns because they're shutting down any kind of debate. They are making it the ridiculous woke city. And I'm really worried about it because it used to be the most exciting city, a revolutionary city, a brave city, and it's really, really losing itself. Now, my point is, Alex, that Manchester needs to save itself. And if we can save Manchester from all of this nonsense, this extremism, this identity politics, then maybe, just maybe, we can save the other cities, the big cities in this town.
Apart from Birmingham, that one's gone.
But apart from, yeah, I mean, that one's gone. But I'm talking about the Leeds and other places.
No, you're right. I mean, I actually used to live in Burnage, believe it or not, which is
So did I.
Did you? Well, I was on Grangethorpe Drive.
I was just on the edge near Withington.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was on the edge near Levenshume. I was near the park on, it was called Grangethorpe Drive, which came off Burnage Lane, I think it was, back in the day. So I know Manchester quite well. And you're right, because in those sorts of neighbourhoods, you've still got old Mancunians, you know, the proper salt-of-the-earth original material. But when you cross the border out towards Longsight and places like that, wow. I mean, it is basically like being in a foreign suburb. Complete. I mean, you just walk down the street somewhere like Longsight, and you don't see anything that reminds you of Britain at all. And so it is one of those. I think it's going to be one of those by-elections where it will also shine a light onto what could happen in London and other sort of urban conurbations that has this split between those who are still there, that what Matt Goodwin would call the left behinds, using his own language, and the new arrivals, let's say. And this is sort of defining now how our politics is largely split, not just in the United Kingdom, but across the West as well. We're seeing this with the big anti-ICE demonstrations in America. Those people who are saying the rate of change, the demographic change is ridiculous. And also these people are taking us for a ride. They're conning us. They're abusing our system. They're extorting from us, and they don't actually have any kinship with our country or our culture. And those who basically think if you mention anything to do with anybody who's not, you know, born and bred for multiple generations in this country, you're automatically committing some sort of fascistic hate crime.
Yeah, it's a crazy situation that we are now. We're talking about civic nationalism and ethno-nationalism, and I wouldn't have thought even 5 years ago we'd be in a situation where we're actually reducing it to that very simplistic dichotomy, and I don't think we should do. I think it's about your connection with the place. I think it's about what you do for the place. It's, you know, it's not what you can take from a country, it's what you can give to a country, how you can enrich it. And I don't mean that in an ironic way, I mean that in a serious way, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking about Manchester in particular, but like you, I'm thinking about the rest of the country, and I'm worried because what's happening is we've imported all of this horrible stuff from the Middle East, you know, already Gorton and Denton is about Gaza as far as the Green Party is concerned. What I'm really pleased that Matt and Reform are doing, they are bringing it back to English issues. They're talking about mass immigration. They're talking about electricity bills and utility bills, for God's sake. These are the really important things, especially from people in those places. They don't have a lot of money, right? This isn't a rich area. No. They're talking about stopping the boats. They're talking about mass immigration. They're talking about making the environment, the lived environment, better. Getting tough on crime, because if you get tough on crime, then you stop the potential for violence in city centres, and it's simple stuff.
He's a brave man, Matt Goodwin, is what I would say. I mean, first of all, he is a political scientist who also it says he is a pollster. So if he gets this wrong and he isn't elected, But also, like you said, whether he's elected or not, I think this fight's going to get ugly. I think it's going to get dirty. And even if he is elected, I wouldn't want to stand in a constituency, were I to ever do this, where I would fear that my party offices could be burnt down, that I would be receiving death threats. And where you have these MPs in constituencies with big Muslim-born populations, there's always elements in that community who do exactly those things.
Yeah, but it's as I was saying before, I think that's what we've got what we've got to look forward to for the next general election. I think there's going to be so much of that, and of course this has a massive impact on the kinds of people that will be standing. I mean, people will look at what's going on and what will go on. I guarantee you this stuff is going to happen, right? People will look at that, and talented people, especially really, really talented young people, are just going to say, oh, that's not for me. I don't want to get involved with that. Why should I? There's nothing in it for me. My life will be put at risk. I think that's where we're going with a lot of this stuff. Okay, and we've already seen it, haven't we? My life will be put at risk. I'll be under constant attack, constant abuse. I won't be able to get anything done, anything meaningful done, because we are looking at sectarian bloc voting. Yeah. It's really, really frightening, and we really need to think not only about the politics, but the mechanisms beneath the politics, the blob, the civil service, or the mechanisms that frustrate getting things done, the ECHR, for God's sake, all of that stuff. It's so complex, it's so deep-rooted. There's an awful lot to be done. I just hope and pray that Reform are up to it.
On that note, let's take a short break. And after that, we're going to be discussing this really brilliant, exciting state visit of Sir Keir Starmer to China. Woohoo! I cannot wait for Beijing to further entangle themselves within our vital infrastructure. That's coming up after this.
To say that it's not happening in London, which I've heard him when questioned by Susan Hall a number of times. He bobs and weaves and evades the question and tries to pretend he doesn't understand it. But the truth is, we know it's happening in London, and we've got our 2-week hearing, which is starting on Monday. It'll be behind closed doors, obviously for sort of safeguarding reasons. And we will be releasing, obviously, the sort of clips of what we think is suitable to be released.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Sorry if I had a big smirk on my face. We were just discussing the fact we're going out after this, and Dean through the glass was like this, like, he's so excited. I'm telling you, this guy, he's got a problem. He's just, you just say the word booze to him and it's like his little eyes light up. He starts like drooling and salivating. He starts convulsing. Honestly, I mean, I'm really old, so I don't go out anymore much. Actually, never. I'm trying to think. I mean, because we're actually going to go to basically a nightclub. I know! Like, seriously, I have not done that in a long time. Sticky floors, dark lights. Oh, my God. Even I'm excited. But that one, seriously, is out of control. Anyway, something else to be very excited about is Sir Keir Starmer's visit to China, because, get this, Brits get visa-free travel under a major Keir Starmer deal. What, we get to go over to China, not have to fill out a visa form, but they will make you fill out a lot of other forms, probably get spied on, end up on some sort of database, compromat will be stored on us, and yay, that's fun, isn't it? Seriously? Let's have a little look at Sir Keir Starmer in action in Beijing.
We had a very good, productive session with real concrete outcomes, and it was a real strengthening of the relationship, and that's in the national interest because, of course, there are huge opportunities here in China. It's the second biggest economy in the world. And that's why we've got such a big business delegation. A lot of the discussion was about how we open up access for those opportunities, focusing, as I always do, on how is this going to be delivered back in the United Kingdom, how does it benefit people back at home. And we made some really good progress on tariffs for whisky, on visa-free travel to China, and on information exchange and cooperation on irregular migration, focusing particularly on small boats and engine parts.
Oh, he's taken them bins off, hasn't he? Where's his glasses gone? Is he trying to, like, blend in a little bit more? Lord Ali didn't go with him with the wardrobe selection. Oh, no, he's probably going to be getting it from Shane now, isn't he? Shein, whatever it's called. But let's rejoin Philip Kisserly and discuss this. Philip, I don't know where to begin with this. Look, I think the way I see it is we haven't really got a choice much when it comes to China now, because Blimmin Osborne and Cameron let them so far into the UK. They're deeply entangled in most of our critical infrastructure, whether it be our electricity, our water, nuclear power stations, phone networks. They're everywhere. They own loads of our debt. They own loads of our real estate. If we upset them, then unfortunately they can press a few buttons and make our lives very difficult indeed. And I hate the fact that we're in that situation. But he's gone out there to apparently make it 1,000 times worse. And what I cannot wrap my head around is he knows, because he's not a fool. At least I don't think he is. I think he's quite willful and evil most of the time. He knows that China is the main supplier of materials to Russia in order that they create all of these arms that they're currently using against Ukraine. He knows that they do the same with Iran, providing all the bits and pieces for their missiles and their drones, even their satellite systems, so they can geolocate their targets. He knows the amount of spying that China does. We've only just had that case recently where he wouldn't say that China was a national security threat. And so the two Chinese spies got off. He knows because the intelligence agencies gave them warnings about this Chinese mega embassy. He knows all of this. So why is he doing this? Is he just basically... I mean, I actually genuinely wonder whether on some level the Labour Party and members of the Labour Party are under the command of these people. When I look at the flogging of the Chagos Islands and the digger you deep into that, and what old Philip Sands and Herma were up to and their connections, the more you just think, blimmin' heck, this is, you know, this is far more grave than I even realised at surface level.
Yeah, I think so. I look at this and I think about our Labour Party and I think about the Chinese Communist Party, and always in my mind I go right back to the Cold War and think about the Labour Party and the Russians. You know, there's a similar correlation there. But I mean, I look at the images of Starmer there in China, and they fill me with alarm. I think, my God, what's he doing? You know, it's almost like idiot dad going away and giving away the deeds to the house, isn't it? You know, and then he comes back and presto, we're left with nothing. It's interesting the tone he's adopting there, isn't it? It's almost, you know, he's almost adopting one of those. He's taking on the Chinese Communist Party mannerisms, and I'm absolutely certain. Well, mainly because we're so reduced in the world now. We have so little power, mainly thanks to him and the previous government, that you know, he's just a pawn. He's just a puppet in their hands. And I can't imagine him talking about, you know, this is the Labour Party. This is, you know, they're supposed to be so ethical and they're supposed to care so much about Muslims and stuff like that. As far as I'm aware, Alex, there are 1.2 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps in China at the moment. 500,000 of them, as I'm aware, picking cotton in fields as slaves. What's going on there? Is he going to mention all of that?
And it's not even just the Uyghur Muslims. It's sort of workers' camps up and down the country. Most of the tat we buy from China is probably being created under unethical circumstances. I remember reading the other day about those really grotesque-looking doll things called like Wabubu or Yabu. I don't know what they're called. So those things, there's an article that they're being made in some sort of horrible factory where people have to poo in buckets and eat it or something. It was just absolutely vile to read. But you say that we're diminished on the world stage. I would argue, actually, that we're not. In many respects, except we act like we are. And China's getting more out of this than we're going to. When Rachel Reeves bounced over there at the start of the Premiership and said, I've done a brilliant deal with China, I've taken over their heads of X, Y and Z, and came back with like contracts worth 500 million quid, which in sort of UK GDP terms is a coin down the back of the sofa, if that. It's probably a chewed up piece of chewing gum from 1986 that somehow stuck itself to the bottom of the city. the thing that China needs, that it's always needed, it's got the manpower because it abuses its staff to churn out a lot at a really fast rate. It controls access to 90% of the discovered rare earth minerals. You know, it's got the materials, it's got the manpower, and so it can undercut anyone anywhere. When I was living over in Ghana, they were even undercutting the Ghanaians at making printed African fabrics. So nicking the designs, getting them printed in China and flooding the Ghanaian markets with them. So that's how low they can go. But what they need is intelligence. They need know-how, which is why they send so many people to our universities. We make about 1/3 of the world's top 100 universities because we actually have the ability to develop high-end AI and robotics or whatever it may be. We've got the skills, we've got the intelligence they need. And similarly, the services, financial services in particular, the City of London is still vital internationally to any country who wants to grow its economy. And so when I read this, look, with the UK is the world's second largest exporter of services. And basically, this is what China wants from us. They don't need the materials. They want to sell us whatever they make to undercut all of our manufacturing. They're going to flood our market with whatever goods they can. They're going to copy our intel, nick our ideas, produce them in China, so any UK manufacturer coming up with anything new is soon enough going to be outpriced or underpriced from the market. They're going to spy on us to get whatever they can. They're going to put in all of their products where they come to do our infrastructure, things that could cut it off. They are predatory mercantilists. And Starmer's basically going to them going, oh, hey, look at the dim sum of opportunity I can give you from Great Britain. Which one do you like?
And this is what I'm worried about. But the thing is, I agree with what you're saying, actually, there, Alex. But even when we're on the front foot, we're in the driving seat, and you talked about education. You talked about our universities. That is a classic example. Okay, they need our knowledge. Okay, it is about the knowledge economy, and they need that expertise. But the problem is, we are just taking absolutely everybody, and the whole financial model of our universities now is predicated on having Chinese students coming in and paying tuition fees. If they went tomorrow, which they probably could do in some major areas like the creative industries, for example, if they went tomorrow and stopped coming over here, our universities would collapse.
Right.
So my point is, we take a really good opportunity and then we make ourselves vulnerable. And that is the story of the Labour Party. And to be fair, that was the story of the Conservative Party for the last 10 years as well. That's why people want change. That's why people want us to be able to say, no, actually, let's put our people first. Let's put our own interests first and then look after everybody else second. And let's see how we can work there. But the problem is, what happens is all of this stuff gets tied up with identity politics and nonsense. You know, and again, let's just stick with the education example because it's a good example. Okay, we're an international university. Let's bring everybody in. Let's be international. Actually, you're not being international. You're being Chinese. You're making yourself vulnerable. And there are spies in every single senate.
Oh, so many. And, you know, this has been going on for decades. It's not just Starmer with the overregulation, the crazy net zero, strangulating any sort of chances of prosperity, the rapid deindustrialisation. I feel at this point Starmer's just taken the carrion that is the United Kingdom, thrown it in the middle of Tiananmen Square and said, pick over the bones to the Chinese. Right, we're going to take another break now, but don't go anywhere because we're going to be talking about how Labour are unsurprisingly failing to commit to trying to cut the numbers of small boats coming to the country. Of course they are.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to Philip as well. Labour have said they're not going to be able to cut the number of people coming into the UK on small boats. Well, they've basically refused to answer questions because, frankly speaking, they don't want to. Because if they did want to, I could give them some really good ideas. I know. How about you stop putting these people in hotels? I know. How about if they're in military barracks, you just lock them in there? I know. How about they don't get anything other than a cold bucket of gruel on a roof over their head? And I know. How about you actually stop a boat halfway across the channel, send it back to France and send a message that this route is now closed? Philip, your thoughts?
Indeed. Well, first of all, they said that, well, we don't have any targets for this, okay? It's silly to kind of set ourselves targets because we won't reach them. So essentially what they're saying, decoding that, is what you've just said. There's no way we're going to deal with this. We don't want to deal with this. What we're going to do instead, we're going to leave women and children vulnerable to undocumented males from primitive cultures who are just going to pour in. I think last year we had, 41,500 people come over in small boats. It was the second biggest number. We can expect something like that again this year. That is actually, and I'm thinking about Crowbar, actually. I'm thinking about all of those people just foisted on a small community. And I'm thinking about the impact that these men have on children's lives, specifically Crowborough, because you had there, didn't you? One day they were there, and you can imagine parents saying to their kids, well, no, you can't play out. You can't go out with your mates. You can't see your friends. It's too dangerous. That changes children's lives. That impacts on children's lives. And of course, much more terrible things happen. This government do not care. They are governing by the day. My God, they're governing by the hour. And if we were talking about diminished stature in the world, other people are seeing this. Superpowers are seeing our complete inability to police our own borders and laughing at us, Alex. That's what they're doing. So these people are just an embarrassment. And not only are they an embarrassment, they're gaslighting us. They're saying that
this is the thing. You talked about our inability to police our own borders. I'm pretty sure we could if we wanted to. But I think about, and you're saying other countries looking at that and laughing at us, countries like China. So Keir Starmer's gone over there and said to China, oh, these engine parts that are being made in China that go into these vessels that are then crossing the channel, can you stop that, please? I'm sorry, but actually, most of these dinghies now are not being bought from, like, Decathlon. They're custom made in China. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger to fit more and more and more people on those boats. They're custom made in China and then shipped over to Europe where the criminal gangs use them. And I'm sorry, but countries such as Iran, Russia and China, who are all in a tidy little friendship group together, are using migration as grey zone warfare. They're using it to destabilise this country. They're using things such as bot farms, and China in particular via TikTok, psyops, to destabilise this country. So Keir Starmer should have said to China, you're not getting anything from financial services. Your students are not coming to British universities anymore because you do these things. Not go over there, having handed all of that on a silver platter, and then say, oh, can you stop making the odd widget? As if the Chinese Communist Party don't know that that's happening. They know everything. It's a surveillance state. They know exactly what's being made in China in order to aid and abet the mass migratory flows.
Yeah, I mean, this is welcome to the 21st century now, isn't it? We're far enough into it. You know, when you talk about the 20th century, it didn't really start until the First World War. Before then, it was a hangover from the 19th century. Now we are far enough into the 21st century. We see what it's going to be like, and it is actually quite terrifying because it is power politics of the most brutal kind. And the kind of warfare you're describing, you're absolutely right to describe it as warfare. We literally do have, I would say, we have Islamist boots on the ground now in this country. Many of of them.
We got them elected into blimmin' Parliament, mate.
We've got them elected into Parliament. We are dealing with their issues, but it's a kind. I mean, I don't want to sound like a ridiculous conspiracy theorist, but it's not. It's just true. This is infiltration, and this is what we're going to see much more of going into the 21st century. And it just feels like our country is either really naive, really stupid, or they're about to pack up and just go away and forget it all.
I think there's a mixture. There's a mixture of people who are doing things willfully for reasons I cannot even begin to entertain, that they actually want these mass migratory flows and they think that we actually need to sort of destroy our civilization. I think there are people who do this with willful intent. And then there are Muppets who think they're on the right side of history by cheerleading it. Muppets, for instance, like the Labour Westminster Council, who have declared that borough a sanctuary for migrants. I mean, it's just revolting. When I lived in Westminster myself, it was lovely. Low council taxes, really clean. You didn't have to pay the diminished ULEZ charge because you lived there. Fairly cheap parking for residents. It was actually, if you live in sort of the political part of Westminster, the SW1 bit, it's almost like living in actual Britain, for crying out loud. And ever since the Labour Party took over control of that council, they have done everything to tear it all apart. They're the ones who have sort of, agreed to having Ramadan lights up Regent Street at the same time as Easter. They removed any indications of Easter from the council office windows. And now they're saying, oh, yeah, brilliant. Come one, come all. They want the city, because Westminster is a city, to be a sanctuary for migrants, to give free access to health service, boosting migrants in taxpayer-funded houses. And the council leader, Adam Hugg, used an expression that I absolutely despise, which he said, our city is shaped by its diversity. No, it's not. It's shaped by its history and heritage.
Yeah,
with 45% of our residents coming from global majority background. I hate that phrase. I think it is racist towards anyone who's non-white, because it's a bit like saying you can all be lumped together as the same human being. But it's also, there's something menacing about that too. It's a bit like saying, oh, well, white people only make up 8% of the entire world's population. Give us a small second and we'll get rid of them completely.
Yeah, it's almost like they're saying, they're coming for you. But the tone of this idiot's, rhetoric when he was talking about that 45%, and he was saying, "Oh, this is amazing. This is brilliant. This is why we're the best city in the world." No. People are being replaced, literally being replaced by people who have no contact, no love for the place, who are just here for what they can get. And I know, because I work in Westminster like you, and I kind of love the place, but I've seen it diminish and diminish and diminish over the years. So it used to be beautiful. The architecture is gorgeous there around where I work, and of course right across from the Houses of Parliament. But the thing is, it's got dirty, it's got dangerous. I think it's actually now the most dangerous place in the country, and it's the most crime-ridden place in the country. This is Westminster. This is SW1. It's insane. And I think that really symbolises, it really brings together all of the stuff we're talking about, how really we are dealing with the utter lunacy of the chattering classes, the ruling classes, who are here to sink the ship and put us in danger.
Totally. I think just up the road from your offices, there's something on the corner there that looks a bit like a dubious form of accommodation with usual suspects lurking around outside. I don't know if you've seen that yourself, but there's...
I have, on Little Peter Street. It's just Great Peter, whatever it's called, near Tufton Street.
Yeah.
I know it really well. But the heartbreaking thing is, it's beautiful round there. You turn a corner and John Gielgud's old house was there. Okay, there are plaques galore. It's the most quintessentially English, beautiful place.
When I lived there 10 years ago, I was on Vincent Square, and I used to go to the good old Marquis of Granby all the time, of course, who doesn't go to the MOG, and I would walk home. When the pub shut, I'd always walk home late at night, and I never, ever had any problems, never felt frightened. It was such a high-trust neighbourhood in London. And to hear that in the period of a decade, it's become that crime-ridden, is heartbreaking. Right, we're going to take another break now, but after that, we're going to be talking about what on earth is going on in Iran. Is Trump going to strike?
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and welcome back to the show now. Iran. It's a very serious topic because what has been going on there, of course, it's being totally underreported by our Islamist-loving legacy media. What is going on there? Why? We had football running commentary on Gaza every blimmin' second of the day, and now there's over 35,000 people massacred by the regime in a number of days, making it probably one of the worst murderous atrocities in history. You heard that right. No, not going to talk about it. I can't fathom this. I really can't fathom this. But the Iranians pleading to Trump, help us, because Trump said you hurt a single hair on anyone's head and we're going to strike you, and we're going to strike you hard. Well, that hasn't happened yet, although the US has moved significant numbers of military assets into the region. Philip, my understanding is, because I speak to people from ex-American military, is that there have been warnings from Israeli intelligence about what Iran might do in retaliation, what their capabilities are. But what America appears to be doing is sizing up to Iran, putting everything, max capacity surrounding them, and basically saying, right, we are going to strike when you don't expect it, where you don't expect it, and in a manner in which you will struggle to respond.
Yeah, I think it's obviously an incredibly worrying situation, but the thing is, the only language that these people understand is the language of power, right? If they smell weakness, they will just exploit it to the hilt, and we've seen that historically with Iran since 1980. We've seen it right throughout the region. I think Israel is absolutely our strongest asset there, Israeli intelligence, which is the best intelligence in the world. So I think probably Trump is doing the right thing. Now, he has this history, doesn't he, of brinksmanship and going right to the edge and pulling back and not actually carrying out his threats. But I think possibly in this instance, I think he's gauging that the threat will be enough. And I really do think here that if he has to, he will follow up on it and he will do what's necessary. I mean, because if he doesn't, and he shows any kind of weakness, we are condemned then for decade upon decade, both of our life, I'm older than you, but both of our lifetimes of continual jihad, global intifada, and God knows what else. And I'm sick of it. The problem, as we said before, we've got so many Islamists, boots on the ground in this country. We are vulnerable. We come at this from a vulnerable position. And I look to America and I look to Trump. And frankly, Alex, I'm envious. I wish I was over there and I wish he was my president.
No, me too. Me too. I mean, I've heard that, Iran has developed a hypersonic missile with a 1,000-kilometre range. Now, that, of course, wouldn't reach America. But my understanding is there are fears that this would be used against Israel as America's closest ally, and perhaps they're concerned that David's sling or the Iron Dome may not be able to intercept it. I do not know. I mean, the EU has thankfully come out and prescribed the IRGC at last. We are still yet to do this in the United Kingdom, and yet we know we're probably a hotbed for their activities. And at the same time, again, we're talking about Iran's weaponry. Their Shahad missiles, that their drones, this hypersonic weapon couldn't exist without the help of China, who supplied all the materials and who signed a deal with Iran quite recently as to Iran being able to use China's satellite systems in order to target their weapons. And so at the same time that Donald Trump is there in the region trying to prevent a load of mad Islamist terrorists blowing the place up and persecuting genocide against their population, 35,000 odd young people who just want to live in some sort of semblance of freedom, slain in the streets with the most horrific brutality, our Prime Minister is there shaking hands and doing deals with the people making those weapons.
Exactly, and just as you were saying that there, you can't help but think that politics, the industrial military complex and culture, they all go hand in hand. And actually, Alex, they're all working against us. The fact that we haven't in, the mainstream, heritage mainstream media, the politicians, the chattering classes have been all but silent about what's been going on in Iran. They've just been kind of, looking kind of semi-constipated and stroking their chins and all the rest of it. The problem is, if they come out and say, look, that is amazing that these people are opting for freedom and pushing.
But why aren't they?
Islamist fundamentalists, they have to say that, okay, well, that's got to happen here then, because we need freedom here. We have to stand up for women. We have to stand up for children. They're never going to do that, Alex.
That's what I don't understand. We don't have enough time to actually discuss it, unfortunately, but I cannot fathom why the legacy media are not all over the massacre, the bloodthirsty, blood-curdling, violent massacre across Iran right now. I don't get it. I cannot understand it.
Well, it's not Israel, is it? And it's not Jews. If it was there, that would be the news for the next 10 years. It's, as I say, they cannot push back on Islamism, because if they do that internationally, they have to do that at home. And as we know, the West Midlands police, they're all in the pockets. They're all terrified that it's going to kick off. Yeah. They're just desperately trying to keep a lid on it.
It's interesting when you look at all the organisations across all walks of life, in the police, in the BBC, in the military, everywhere, which are called the Muslim Association. You kind of think, is this a bit like the Chinese Guanxi? Philip, thank you ever so much. It's always brilliant catching up with you. The brilliant Philip Kisley. Don't go anywhere, because we're discussing the amount of people who have been released from prison by Labour. Pretty much all of them. That's after this.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and welcome back to the show. You'll be pleased to know that during the advert breaks I'm actually penning a song for my producer Dean and he cannot wait to hear it. Never know, might even perform it during the 9 o'clock hour with the backing singer of Samara. That's why you're going to stay tuned to 9 o'clock because, can I just say, as Margaret said, she said, well, she thinks they're brilliant shows. I'm not going to blow so much smoke up my posterior. But if Margaret says so, it's got to be true. Serious stuff, she says. Well, we've just done that, haven't we? But from 9 o'clock, hilarious. That's what I'm saying. It's like we just sort of start dialing up, don't we? We sort of go, you know, we're going to start off with all the things that are going to depress us. And then once the three-finger gins come out, woohoo, who knows where we're going to go. I'm hoping Samara, I spotted her earlier, knocking about there looking beautiful. I hope she's beginning to mainline the weirdness, ready for whatever is going to take place later. And like I said, I'm here working on a song about Dean. Actually, I think Compliance Claire will tell me off if we sing this song. But, you know, I could try and explain it to you. We could sing parts of it. I might be able to change some of the words and make it Ofcom friendly. Compliance Claire would love it. I mean, if she was here, she'd be three-fingering that gin all by herself and dancing along because she is absolutely sound. But she knows that the people in their sort of shiny metal towers in Ofcomville would probably pick up on it and drag us all off to Ofcom prison. So we're not going to let that happen. Talking about prison, though, there must be a lot of space in those prisons now because apparently this year Labour has freed nearly 50,000 criminals from jail. 50,000 have been released, which is absolutely insane because our prison estate, get this, across the UK, can accommodate 89,000 prisoners. So 50,000 out of 89,000? Blimey heck! That's like about 2/3 of them just gone. Who are these people? I mean, really, if 2/3 of people in prison shouldn't have been there, what were they doing there in the first place? Also, have they just been instantly replaced by all of these people, I don't know, wandering around threatening us with terrorist attacks? No, probably not. Let's speak to Kevin Hurley, former Detective Chief Superintendent in the Met Police. Now, I know that we had overcrowded prisons. I know that there had to be, because we've absolutely failed to do anything about prison building, not just this government, but previous ones, that we've got to a point that we were desperately overflowing. We only had enough capacity to put in the nick about, I don't know, 80 people, and that was it. Boom, the system's collapsed. But 50,000 out of a prison estate of 89,000, that seems like an awful lot.
Well, indeed, Alex. But the bottom line of it is most of the people who go into prison are on shorter sentences rather than the people who go into the Category A prisons. But what you're seeing here is, as you said, a manifestation of government policy under the Conservative government, principally, who failed to address the reason why the prisons are full. And, of course, Labour are dealing with the end of it. And like it or not, they actually haven't got any option, because when the police arrest someone, they've got to have somewhere for the courts to send them to. So, of course, they need to clear it out. The real concern for me, having dealt with hundreds, if not thousands of criminals over the years, even the more petty ones, is the only thing that actually concerns them is getting sent to prison. And what this new legislation is doing, it's effectively tying the hands further of the district judges to prevent them giving sentences if it's likely to be less than a year. So it all amounts to, if you don't fund the criminal justice system properly, and by that I mean the courts, the judges, the prosecutors, prison, probation service, youth diversion with social services, and drug rehabilitation, you end up in the middle of this, what is a perfect storm. I will say this as a former cop. Everyone who knocks the cops should think on when they do that, because the prisons are full for one reason. It's because the police put them there and not the RSPCA.
I mean, Let's talk about recidivism now, shall we? Which is when people come out of prison and they go on to commit more and more offences. I would imagine that's probably especially true with the people with shorter sentences, the people who are part of gangs, who might have been thieving, stealing, drug dealing, whatever. They come out of prison, they go straight back into the clutches of the groups that they were associating with. They can't get a job. They've got a black mark against their name, and so they just end up doing what they did before all over again. And this time, if their sentences are being cut down to a poxy, I don't know, couple of months of playing football or something, in a fairly relaxed prison environment, it doesn't seem too much of a punishment or disincentive to go back to criminal activity.
Well, the issue is with what people might call the petty criminals, the people who break into cars, low-level street drug dealers, burglars, is they carry out a cost-benefit analysis of what's the chances of what I'm going to make? Is it going to help me to feed my drug habit or do whatever they want to do with it against the consequences of being caught? And what we've created here is a mechanism which it further improves the cost-benefit analysis for themselves to carry on with their criminal offending. The bottom line on it is that a lot of these people who are engaged in organised shoplifting, breaking into cars, low-level street robberies, if there's such a thing, because it's pretty terrifying for the victim, they are unlikely to get more than a year for the sentence. So actually, there's no deterrent. You can put a tag on them if you like, but that's not a deterrent. The ultimate deterrent for them is to know that they're going to be banged up, because contrary to popular belief, if you're in, as we see there, Brixton prison or Wandsworth, they're not actually having a particularly nice time. They're 2 or 3 in a cell, sharing the toilet. The food is not very nice, because I've been in there a number of times in the past, seeing what goes on. But it is a consequence, and I actually come from a background from a view that, albeit this person who's an organised shoplifter, someone who breaks into our cars and smashes our windows when they're causing a lot of inconvenience, or indeed burgling our houses, when they're locked up on D-Wing in Wandsworth or Pentonville, they're not burgling us.
Right.
So for those who say prison doesn't work, the other function it does, which is protect us, the public, from their offending, it does that very well.
But what I don't understand is why we have not been building multiple mega prisons for years now, because there are a few things that stand as truisms. One is that our population is rapidly enlarging. The more people you've got, the more prisons you're going to need. Number 2 is we have imported so much criminality. Most of our organised crime is being done by foreign gangs now. And add to that, the number of new categories of crime we're now having to contend with as a nation, as all nations pretty much on planet Earth, where once upon a time it might be, burglary, mugging, sexual crimes and, whatever, murder. Now we've got cyber crimes, hate crimes, revenge porn, terrorism on a scale that we never had before. And add to that immigration crime, quite frankly. And it stands to reason that we would have needed to massively increase our capacity within our prison estate, and successive governments have failed to do it. And I don't understand the reasoning here, because you could say, well, not enough money to do this, not enough money to do that. But they seem to be able to pull money out of the, ethers for other ridiculous projects.
You are right, and of course the problem for government is the NHS pulls in one direction. Everyone wants more done on education. Everyone wants more done on defence. People want the fisheries protected. And the list is endless for government, so they have to walk a challenging line along with providing adequate social benefits. But the key point you made earlier on was the population of the UK has grown massively in the last 30 years, from being 52 million to being nearly 70 million. And the demographics have changed significantly at an accelerating rate over the recent years. So, for example, as you rightly identify, the entire cocaine trade in the United Kingdom is controlled by Albanian gangsters, with the exception of Merseyside, because the Scousers are too tough to let them in there. But the fact is, organised crime has changed in terms of the flavour of it. Yes, there are still the white traditional organised crime families around London, the North East, Merseyside, the West Midlands, but they've since been joined with people whose cultural values are perhaps different and bringing a different flavour of organised crime. It all adds up to there is not enough prison space. And there's a worse issue building around the prisons, which is because they failed, the government, the last one, and even now this one, failed to invest in training and recruiting adequate numbers of both prison officers, prison governors, and indeed educationalists to start to move people down the route of some form of rehabilitation, which of course is crucially important. We're in a situation where, to fill the gap, they did exactly the same as was happened recently with Boris when he brought in loads of care workers. So they brought in lots of people of West African, principally Nigerian heritage, and filled up lots of prison jobs. But in recent months, you may have read, oh, this is all wrong, let's tighten up on the visas of all of these people. Well, of course, that also included the prison staff. So the Home Secretary is now having to make an exception for the West African prison staff, or we'd have no one to run
I'll
the
tell you what I find
the
most ridiculous thing that I keep seeing is the fact that all of a sudden some wise egg somewhere has filled up a lot of male prisons with a load of OnlyFans dolly birds who's supposed to be monitoring the inmates, and they all seem to be sleeping with one another.
Well, I mean, these are small examples, but they are an example of the failure in terms of standards of recruitment and recruiting the right people, because, of course, you've got some young women who have come into the prisons who are being manipulated, bear in mind, by some
why would you put old Janine with her inflated lips and her hair extensions in the middle of a male prison? That's madness. Even if she's got no intention of having some nookie with an inmate, I can't see how that's pleasant for her, being surrounded by a load of sexually staffed predatory men.
Well, I think you've got a good point there, but, as the organisation moves forward and diversifies the workforce, and they have difficulty in recruiting male staff and retaining them, of course, lots of young women would think we'd like to come into it. Well, of course, there aren't enough women prisons for the jobs, so they moved off to the male prisons. And, as I was saying, some of these criminals are very charismatic, very clever. And if you're foolish and these people are working with you on the wing every day with, I might add, inadequate training, inadequate supervision and guidance, and indeed selection, they may well be gullible and they may be recruited, if you like, to be people to be used.
I just think it's crazy. For me, it's crazy to put women working in men's prison, full stop. I just think that is a madness. Before I let you go, let's talk about the fact as well that the number of police has plunged by 1,300 in just a year under Labour, equivalent to more than 3 officers being scrapped every single day. We are talking about the nature of crime changing, the demographic changes, the growth of our population, which the official number is around 70 million. I would imagine the true number is significantly more. And we know how crime-ridden it is, not just in the streets of London, but everywhere now, almost everywhere. Unless you happen to live in some cute little rural village, you've probably seen the crime rate tick up quite significantly. And at the same time, it seems to me that we're just hemorrhaging police officers.
Sorry, Alex, I missed some of that.
Yeah, I was just saying that the number of police officers have dropped.
Police numbers are important. Well, look, the bottom line on it is, Alex, and it was flagged up firstly in 1991 under what was called the Sheehy Report, and then again in 2010 with Cameron and May in charge, that if you slash the pay and conditions of the police, you will not retain and you will not recruit. So where we are now with the police service is most importantly, they can't retain experienced, capable people. And coming from a background of 9 members of my family being members of Metropolitan Police and 6 specialist detectives, I was very saddened to see 2 years ago my son, a detective sergeant on the anti-terrorist squad, walking out the door for the private sector. And continually mid-level experienced detectives, who are the ones you can't afford, are leaving for obvious reasons to go into the banks, insurance, to protect their assets. And interestingly enough, the other beneficiaries of these people leaving are the railway companies, because lots of experienced uniformed constables are being recruited by the railway companies to drive trains. And the reason is they need people who are reliable, can make decisions in challenging circumstances, and if necessary, manage people. So the police are in fact hemorrhaging out experience, filling them in under Boris with people who are not properly vetted, not properly recruited. And we've seen the latest manifestation. Policemen recently convicted of rape, having been investigated before for child abuse, not vetted. And so it goes on. It comes down to the challenges of government. What are they going to do with their money?
Yeah.
And if government decide they don't want to invest properly in our security and safety as a society, they will not maintain a quality police force, and they will not maintain adequate numbers of Crown prosecution lawyers, judges, courts and prisons. And all we're seeing is a manifestation of that. So, for example, the Home Secretary's current police reform stuff is essentially shuffling the deck chairs whilst the Titanic sinks.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. It's happening over all forms of our public life at the moment, because we seem to invest in ridiculous ideological-driven vanity projects and not manage our own home affairs effectively. Kevin, thank you ever so much for joining me tonight. We're going to take a short break now. I'm delighted to say someone I admire so much is joining us after the break. The brilliant Tom Tugendhat, who's former security minister. We're going to be talking to him, of course, about what is going on geopolitically, that trip to China, because Tom has always been extremely outspoken when it comes to China, but also going to talk to him about Sir Keir Starmer, back in his days as a human rights lawyer, was encouraging the use of the ECHR to investigate British troops and how that impacted people on the ground, because of course he himself served. It's going to be a fantastic conversation, so that's coming up after this.
did say, no, the rights of the asylum seekers are above the rights of the British people.
Shabana Mahmood is going onto these media channels and saying that she's been, engaging with communities, engaging with police. She's engaged with no one.
The latest is that Brooklyn could be set to sign a 7-figure book deal, and it's the same publisher as Prince Harry's Spare. That makes me shudder.
And Mel B wasn't there. Scary wasn't there, so I'm going to step in. I'm here. I'm ready for it. Nigel, I'm sorry. I'm joining the Spice Girls.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the programme, and welcome aboard HMS Common Sense, the one and only brilliant Tom Tugendhat MP, Conservative and former Security Minister. Tom, it's wonderful to have you on the programme. I really lost my mind yesterday when I learnt about Starmer's connection to the witch hunt of our troops, given that it was the Labour government who decided to send our military men and women there. And he thought it correct to advise people, and instead of using UN treaties, use the ECHR to go after troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I just cannot understand how this man is now our Prime Minister. You've written a brilliant piece today explaining exactly how this impacts upon individuals within the theatre of war, and I hope you would walk us through that somewhat.
Sure. Well, look, Alex, it's lovely to see you as always. And look, let me just set out a few of the basic principles. First of all, the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR, was drafted by people in the 1940s and then brought in the 1950s, and they knew what war was, right? These are the guys who had landed at Normandy, who'd fought their way from Anzio all the way to Berlin. They knew what war was about. They knew the horrors of it, and they knew that the correct law for war was the law of armed conflict, what we call the Geneva Conventions, which allows the strong, those who are trained, soldiers, people who've been equipped, to defend the weak, civilians, our country, whatever it happens to be, right? And they wrote the ECHR not to stop that, not to get in the way of that, but in order to protect people from the Gestapo, from fascist tyranny, from the death camps, from the abuses of an overmighty government. So they wrote it very specifically to apply to what happened in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in France, in the signatory states. They were completely clear about it. But guess what happened in the 1990s, 2000s, forgive me. In the 2000s, the law started to expand, and it expanded because of a corrupt lawyer by the name of Phil Shiner, who you may have heard of, who began to bring legal action. But initially, the House of Lords said, hang on a minute, this law doesn't apply to Iraq. It doesn't apply to these overseas places. That's not the correct use of the law. Guess what? Another lawyer came in and said, oh, yes, it does. And he went to the High Court and to the House of Lords, and he appealed that. And he made the argument that actually the European Convention on Human Rights also applied to anywhere where British troops were, and therefore us in Iraq. Who was that lawyer? You know it, Alex. It was Sir Keir Starmer. Now, here's the problem. When I was a soldier, if you saw a legitimate military target in combat, you can shoot them. I'm afraid it's not nice, but the whole point of soldiering is to protect your interests overseas with the legal and justified use of violence. It's not like policing. The difference with policing is you're in a civilian environment. You've got to give a warning. You've got to alert people. You've got to do all those sort of things. Not when you're a soldier. Why? Because you're in battle. You don't warn people when you're lying up or you're camouflaged. You don't alert them that you're coming. If a state of war is engaged, then you can use all force appropriate to that occasion. Can you imagine having to give warnings at the beaches of Normandy or as we landed in the Falklands? Can you imagine having to give warnings when we sent paratroopers into the bridges in Nijmegen? Can you imagine having to give warnings when we were in El Alamein? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's completely absurd. And of course it's absurd because our troops aren't police officers. You know, your previous guest was quite rightly talking about the problems in policing, but soldiers are not police officers. That's not what they're there for. Totally different law, totally different circumstance. But guess what? Not anymore.
But what I cannot fathom is a lot of this work Sir Keir Starmer did pro bono. He chose to do it for free. We have a man running our country right now who willfully wanted to offer his services for no financial gain in order to prosecute British soldiers. I don't understand how that man is still in charge of our country. You know, Boris Johnson ate a piece of cake when the sun was over the yardarm in the same room he'd been in all day, and he was gone. He was gone because it contravened regulations at the time, and it wasn't in the spirit of the nation all working together as one. This man willfully pursued witch hunts, including one particular guy who they tried to prosecute 3 times and failed 3 times. What sort of motivation does he have? I cannot fathom it, Tom.
Well, look, I'm not going to even try to explain that to you, Alex, because I can't. Okay, so forgive me. That's beyond me. But let me just tell you the effect it's having, because I think it's important to understand this, right? So first of all, we're dealing with, by and large, young men and women, right? And we're mostly dealing with people between the ages of 18 and 25 here, because they're junior commanders. They're the ones right at the tip of the spear, if you see. So it's corporals, lance corporals in charge of 4 or 8 men. It's men or women, and it's lieutenants in charge of 30 or so troops, right? It's junior commanders who are having to take really tough decisions. And let me tell you, I spent the best part of 4 years in Afghanistan, and I spent the best part of a year in Iraq. You know, you're living on the ground, you're exhausted, you've been up for many, many, many hours, you haven't had a proper sleep or a proper wash in weeks, maybe months, and you may be extremely hungry. And worse than that, you may be quietly terrified. You may have been through pretty traumatic events over the last few weeks and months, and you're now trying to take really split-second decisions that, if you get them wrong, could get you or your friends killed. Right? These are tough, tough calls that you're having to make, and you're being judged as though you were sitting around in some sort of council planning meeting, wondering whether Section 4B or 7G should apply to a decision. It's completely absurd. It's totally absurd. But worse than that, once you've made your decision, and you've made it, let's be honest, with pretty limited information, when you're tired, when you're under extreme pressure of exhaustion and fear, and you've made your decision, but guess what? You second-guess yourself. You second-guess yourself because you suddenly realize that if you get this wrong, even if you survive, you could be dragged through the courts 3, 4 times. Now, you may say, oh, well, you weren't found guilty. Okay, you try and restart your life if every few months you're going through another legal process, and it's interminable. I mean, I'm afraid plenty of second lieutenants, plenty of corporals have found this unbelievably traumatic because it feels like they are never released. And actually, the reason the courts can't convict, first of all, is because they've done nothing wrong under the law of armed conflict. They've done nothing wrong as soldiers, but also because this isn't Bristol or Birmingham or London or Glasgow. It's Afghanistan or Iraq. There are no witnesses in that sense. There are no, speed cameras or CCTVs or whatever. You're trying to impose civilian considerations on a military theatre, and it just doesn't work. And so every single time the courts fail, and they're bound to fail, then they try again and they try again. And that's a form of punishment in itself.
Do you know, I want to read out something that you wrote in the article, which I circled because I thought it was so poignant and important. Talking about a generation of civilians who have forgotten the reality of war and don't believe in the devil, but evil exists. And I think this is it. I don't know. I've never gone to Iraq or Afghanistan or served, but I understand a little bit that the mindset of an Islamist is completely different. Death isn't a problem for them. Also, the sort of way that they treat people who they may take as prisoners isn't exactly following the Geneva Convention. It is more harrowing, horrifying and inhumane than anything most imaginations could conjure up.
Well, Alex, just look at what the news is out of Afghanistan today. The Taliban have just reintroduced slavery. Like actual slaves. Britain fought against this, 200 or so years ago, and ended it. And the last country to legally abolish slavery, I'm going to get it wrong, I think it was 1979, 1980, something like that. It was Mauritania. Afghanistan have just reintroduced it. I mean, Jesus wept. It's extraordinary. And so when people behave as though, this is basically like some sort of traffic offence, it's a misunderstanding, or the crook, he's somebody with a sort of eye patches and a stripy jumper and a bag that's called swag on it, and we have to behave like that. No, some people are evil. Sometimes when we're fighting in countries, we're fighting against evil. And you can call that evil the devil, you can call it anything you like.
Yeah.
I tell you what, if you've seen the devil walk the earth, and you do in war, then you know what evil really is.
I mean, when I was over in Israel, I watched the unedited October the 7th footage, and it just changed me forever. Forever.
Well, I'm sorry you had to watch it, but I'm afraid I'm glad you did.
No, likewise. No, that's exactly the way I feel. I was harrowed by it, but it just, you suddenly realise what the West is up against. And talking about that, let's talk about geopolitics. There's a lot going on, Tom. Let's first of all address Sir Keir Starmer going over to China. He must feel very at home here. But you've always been extremely hawkish on China, rightly so, I would say. It seems to me everything he's doing for Beijing. He's saying, oh, right, so you don't have the knowledge to be able to create things. That's okay. Your students can come to our universities. Oh, right, so you need access to the City of London, financial services, all of those things that we're really good as the world's second largest exporter. You need that in order to thrive. You can have them. But all he seems to have gotten back is, well, I don't know. They're just allowing them to become greater and greater entrenched within critical infrastructure, giving them the mega embassy, apparently conveniently forgetting it's China who's largely arming or enabling dual-use goods to be used to arm Iran and Russia. I mean, is he an idiot, or is he somehow under the thumb of Xi Jinping?
Look, I'm afraid, Alex, this is the problem with socialists. They don't really understand how the world works. The truth is he thinks that trade is something you ask nice people for and nice people give you something for it. It's complete rubbish. Trade isn't that. Trade is the exchange of somebody who knows how to make something and somebody who wants to buy it. That's it. Whenever we've had a fight with China, when David Cameron met the Dalai Lama and had a fight with China, Chinese said never talk to him again, all that sort of rubbish. And guess what? Trade went up. Why? They've got stuff. They want to sell it. Amazingly enough, they continue to sell it even when they're cross with us. Why? Because they need the money. I mean, look, this is ridiculous. And yet here we have Keir Starmer going over in a time when we know that he hasn't got Jimmy Lai out of prison, a British citizen who's been arrested and been in prison for more than 1,000 days for doing exactly the same crime as you're doing now, Alex, the crime of journalism. Terrible offence, I know. But, it's completely absurd. And what's he got out of it? He's got visa-free travel for Brits. Well, look, I'm not particularly worried about getting into China. It's getting out that I'm concerned about. Right. Just ask the Canadians Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, who were held for years by the Chinese state as a former hostage against the Canadian government. That's what we should be concerned about.
Right. But this visa-free travel is for UK businessmen to go over there, and no doubt the Chinese authorities will be collecting their intelligence on these individuals, will be potentially trying to find ways to coerce them, to spy on them, to get hold of the things that they need, because they're predatory mercantilists. And it's almost like he seems to be totally blissfully unaware about the anti-Western axis, which has propped up most of the terrorism in the world, that is propping up the war of attrition over in Ukraine, that all of these things, frankly speaking, wouldn't have been possible without the helpful hand of China.
Well, look, what's the main focus of our foreign policy at the moment? It's supporting Ukraine, right? You and I have been very clear on this. We've been absolutely solid on it. And by the way, I don't know what the percentage is now, but 70-80% of British people are absolutely clear that the murder of Ukrainians by the Russian military has been absolutely horrific. And guess where those missiles come from? Guess where the bombs come from? They all come from China.
Yes.
And China is supporting the Russian economy by buying it. So, let's not pretend these two things are separate. They're not separate. It's the same thing. And it's absolutely horrific. So the idea that we should be giving them a gift of the mega embassy and ignoring the fact that they're stealing, jobs and company secrets off Britain, or beating up Hong Kongers on our streets, or threatening people in our universities, and turn around and go, oh, no, that's all right. Don't worry, we'll come and see you. Come on.
And as you're rightly pointing out, the other half of this is the relationship with Iran. And we seem to be completely negligent in this space. I've barely heard a peep out of the government about what seems from the outside looking in, and we don't have a great deal of information, but one of the worst slaughters of a civilian population by a regime that we have seen in recent history. Utterly harrowing. And yet, again, who's been sharing their satellite technology with Iran, enabling them to geolocate drones and missiles? Oh, that's right, to China, who's been selling the dual-use good products to Iran, enabling them to build their weaponry. That's correct. China. And then who has been, Iran's been sponsoring all the terrorism around the world. And we're doing absolutely nothing about this. Meanwhile, thank goodness, whatever one thinks of his rhetoric and his bluster and his approach to things, thank goodness Donald Trump has the wherewithal to realise that Iran has to be stopped. Where do you see this going? Because we know that a lot of the military hardware has now moved into the region. We've got jets in the various Middle Eastern airport bases. We've got the big American carrier ships in the region. There seems to have been a delay. And my understanding, as far as I know, is that they are being very cautious about this, that they're weighing up the potential of retaliation from Iran, what that might look like. Do you think it will end up being a use of kinetic force?
Well, I'm beginning to think it might be, actually. I'm beginning to think it's more likely than not. And the reason I say that is not just because you're seeing the American fleet moving into the Persian Gulf, not only because you're seeing the early warning aircraft going into, and the targeting aircraft going into Qatar, but because, as you may know, I was a journalist in Beirut between 97 and 99, and as you can imagine, I've kept a few friends there. And one of them was telling me the other day that members of Hezbollah, senior members of Hezbollah, are being warned by American interlocutors. I can only presume that's CIA, but I may be wrong. But they're being warned by American interlocutors that if anything happens in Iran and they respond against Israel, then the Americans will respond against them. And so it sounds like the sort of diplomatic preparation that you would do if you're thinking about striking Iran. Now, I can't tell you whether or not the Americans really are going to strike Iran. All I can tell you is what people are saying in the region and what the Americans are saying to other people. Apparently, they've also said the same to the Houthis down in Yemen. Again, I'm afraid I can't validate that, but I've heard it pretty strongly said by people who should know.
I mean, what we've actually seen previously was when America did strike Iran, it was done quite thoughtfully, in a very specific targeted fashion, using technology that the world hadn't seen before, similar in many respects to the way that they've operated in Venezuela. So I wonder if we'll see the same, a targeting of military assets or command centres. I wouldn't imagine for 1 second America's going to strike civilian places.
No, well, look, you know, General Kane, who is the new chairman of, well, not that new anymore, actually, but who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the senior US military officer, is an extremely impressive individual, an Air Force officer, very, very capable. He's very, very close friends with many people who I served with in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've seen him at a couple of drinks parties and things like that. That's a polite way of putting it. But he's a great guy, and he's extremely sensible. So I think he's making very wise decisions. He's offering the president a range of options that sound to me like they're sensible, or at least certainly have done so far. Let's see what happens in Iran. I mean, I have no greater knowledge than you do on that, but he's a very sensible individual.
That's good to know, and all I can say is thank goodness in many respects for America right now, because our governments are just nowhere to be seen when it comes to fighting on the right side of history. Tom, you always are fighting on the right side of history and have dedicated your life to it in various different guises, and it's always a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Isn't he wonderful? So I just love that man to the bones. I think he is brilliant. You don't often get people of that calibre in politics, and he was a brilliant security minister. When you speak to someone like Tom and look at the Muppets we've got in cabinet right now, I mean, the gulf between the two is insane. Okay, right, after the break, we're going to be talking about the fact that despite the Supreme Court ruling, despite, finally, we know that women can't have penises. It goes on and on and on. Bridget Phillipson sits on the legislation, failing to implement it. She doesn't want to because she loves the rainbow alphabet lot. And the poor women have been campaigning for ages to protect their swimming spaces at the Hampstead Ponds, are still finding that trans swimmers can go and use them. We're catching up on that after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I mean, seriously, I thought that by now, when a sensible decision had been taken to suggest that women needed their own spaces and that a woman was, well, I don't know, a woman, right? Okay, it's very simple. You would have thought that that was that. But these lot, they don't give up, do they? All these people who want to bang the drum for their progressive claptrap, their non-scientific drivel that actually is extremely harmful. The narcissists who think that they've got to have what they want, no matter how many other people it impacts. Oh no, off they go. And this is extremely clear and constantly being played out in the argument over the Hampstead ponds. The women who wanted to say that, look, you've got various pools. You've got the man's one, you've got the anyone can use it one, then you've got our ladies one. Can that just be for ladies? Please, please. Why does a man in a frock have to go swimming there? Why can't he swim in the unisex one? I don't get it. Well, the argument bubbles on. Let's speak now to Fiona McInerney, Director of Sex Matters. Fiona, what's the latest?
Well, as you know, Alex, we sought permission from the court to challenge the policy at the swimming ponds because, as you say, there's a ladies' pond for 100 years. It's meant to be women only. It's private. There's a men's pond, there's a mixed pond, there's somewhere for everyone. Today, the judge denied us permission to put the case as to why that policy of letting men who say they're women into the women's pond is unlawful. We know why, you know why, you mentioned the Supreme Court judgment. But because the City Corporation of London is doing a review right now, the judge said now is not the time. She said the policy's been around for a while, you're out of time, there's going to be a new policy, maybe that's the time. Or, she said, maybe a woman who doesn't like this policy should just bring her own discrimination case to the county court. And that's very shocking, because that's basically saying you can run an unlawful policy and people just have to find the money and the courage to face the publicity and take it to court.
Who are the people on the other side of this? That's what I want to know. Are there like hundreds of trans people who are all desperate to use that pond? Or is it just one agitator? Is it a sort of like overactive NGO?
Well, there are certainly NGOs banging the drum for the rights of men who say they're women to get to go everywhere that's meant to be women only, and it seems to be a particular interest of theirs. And then there are men of all kinds who've decided that it's quite a fun thing to go to the ladies' pond because the City Corporation has told them they can. And so the truth is, no woman who wants to go and swim there and sunbathe there and relax there in female-only company can be confident there won't be someone male there. You know, who knows what's in these men's minds? Do they really believe they're women? Have they taken any medication? That's not part of it. The only thing that is part of it is that we can all see who's male and who's female, and the ladies' pond admits men now, and that's a great shame and a great loss.
But so you're suggesting as well that there will be people who do this just as provocateurs, people who want to upset women, people who want to sort of make some sort of statement.
Well, we know that, you know, most men are not a threat, but most threat to women does come from men.
Yeah.
And if only we knew how to tell the good ones from the bad ones, we don't. But I think in general, you know, there's a saying, good men stay out so that bad men stand out. I think that, you know, the expectation is that any decent man would not impose himself in a place where he's not wanted, and the Hampstead Ladies' Pond is one of those places.
That's a very good saying indeed. You're right. I mean, I don't understand why, you know, if someone had consideration who, even though they might have dysphoria or like putting a frock on at the weekend, why they wouldn't say, look, I actually understand. I associate myself wanting to be a woman, so I get why women might feel uncomfortable, so I will just go to the unisex pond. It has to be people, like you said, who actually want to disturb women, because it's very clear. You know, this argument has been played out in public for so long now. I've got to read out what the spokesperson of the City of London Corporation has said. We note the court's decision. This case has required significant time and resources, which could otherwise be focused on managing Hampstead Heath as a charity and providing high-quality public services. We have now published the results of a consultation on future access arrangements at the Heath's bathing ponds. The findings will be presented to City Corporation committees, which will consider them alongside legal duties, equality impact assessments, has safeguarding responsibilities and operational... Oh, I can't be bothered finishing this. But what... How rich to say this has required significant time and resources and then bang on about all these other things when they could have just said, Supreme Court said, women are women, bam, case closed. I don't understand. It's just, oh, it's egregious. Thank you ever so much, Fiona. Good luck for the next step in this battle. Right. OK, after the break, it is time to talk to some of you and read out some of your messages. So if you have not contacted the show yet, if it's going to be your first time, then let's do it. It is Thursday, and that means it's time to be a little bit brave because tomorrow... I didn't know until just the other day that in 30 minutes time tomorrow I actually come off air. It's a 2-hour show on a Friday. Whoop, whoop. Party time. It means I'll actually be able to make the last train back to Gloucestershire. Whoop, whoop. And not have to go via Swindon, which is an interesting experience, can I just say. OK, right, if you want to talk, it's 03444991000. Young Matt is ready and willing to take your call and patch you through to the studio. You can use that number as well to send me messages, however harrowing they may be, such as this one. Miliband will be PM within the next year. Thank you ever so much, Paul. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. Just as well I'm going out to get a skinful. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send a text message. If you're going to do that, write the word talk before you text. Evening, Alex. Is there anywhere you haven't lived? Every show location is brought up and you've lived there. Keep up the good work, Scott in Surrey. I've never lived in Surrey. I don't know why. I just seem to pick places, don't I, in my past that seem to become newsworthy in the present day. But that's why I've got life experience as a journalist. I actually left the M25 and went and saw the world and lived in different places. Oh, I've got a mottled and checkered career, do I? But it means I've got a lot to talk about, as do you, I hope. So do get in touch because we're going to be speaking to some of you just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Becca says, wasn't Touch of Frost set in Denton? Other than that, I've never heard of it. I don't know, was it? Was A Touch of Frost set in Denton? I've never watched A Touch of Frost. So I don't know where it was set. Joanna in Salisbury says, how does Starmer do it? A whole waffle with zero content. That sounded like a week's conference rather than 80 minutes. He's got nothing. He's got some, all right, and it ain't things that we want. Hi, Alex. Keir Starmer's visit to China, discussing trade, etc. Shouldn't that be Rachel Reeves' job? She must be, as we shall say, massively miffed Phil in Portsmouth. Of course, she wasn't invited on this trip. I don't know why. I wonder. There's a funny lot. There's odd things going on in all of this. Anyway, let's speak now to Steve, who's in Cambridgeshire. Hi there, Steve.
Hello, Alex. My point is, if ever a country wanted to tell another country that they're impotent and can't defend their own borders, they go and ask them to stop selling boat parts.
No, yeah. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Starmer does nothing but act like an obsequious little moron. And it doesn't matter which country he goes to. When he comes home or, you know, wearing combat gear, which I think is vile that he does that, knowing all this stuff he did against our armed forces, he will say, well, we've got to talk tough. And people go, isn't he great? Isn't he wonderful? Stand it. No, he just sort of says a few words down a barrel of a camera when he's safely away from the action. But watch him go anywhere else and he's like, oh, yes, please, please, what can we do? The man is a moron.
Yeah, well, why does he bother wearing combat gear? He might as well disband the Army, Navy and the Air Force because he doesn't use them.
Right. Well, no, I mean, I'm glad he doesn't use them because then he'd want to throw them all in prison as well. He'd be sending them to, I don't know, he'd probably send them to have war against Israel, knowing him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the man is an absolute clown. How he ever got to where he is, well, I do know how he got to where he is, but...
How did he get to where he is?
Well, he's a con man. He's like Jack Polanski of the Green Party, isn't he?
Well, that is an opinion, let us say. Compliance Claire is probably listening, so I'll have to say, well, I've never known him to be doing dodgy dealings that we can actually prove. I do, you know, he's certainly not... Either he's very political and therefore is working against the interests of the country, willfully, which is a terrifying prospect, or he's just rubbish at politics. And I don't know which one it is. I sometimes think it's a combination of the two. Yeah,
but it's looking more and more like he's working against the interests of the country. Everything he does. I mean, why would you penalise your own forces that have defended the country
and offered to do it for free? That sort of makes it even worse. If he was sort of doing this because that just happened to be the case file that landed on his desk at his chambers, and therefore that was a job. I mean, you know, murderers require representation, so, you know, that's just the name of the game when it comes to law. But it wasn't even that. It was some sort of hobby horse for him. And there's a lot of questions to be asked about that Chambers and how that Chambers now seems to be running the country, whether it's Philip Sands handing over Chagos, whether it's the unelected Attorney General in the form of Lord Hermer, or indeed our Prime Minister. We're not being run by a democratic elected government. We're being run by barristers who set up the most extreme left-wing legal chambers that you can imagine. That is who is in charge of this country. They're not accountable. The legacy media aren't asking enough questions. They're not making enough noise. Oh no, if it's Boris Johnson and some gold wallpaper, which didn't even blimmin' exist, let's all get a bee in our bonnet about that. But let's not ask any questions about three men who seem to have done some pretty weird things when they were human rights lawyers back in the day against the interests of the nation, who are now in the shadows effectively running it.
Yeah, well, the only good thing is that the Americans are now aware that the Chagos deal is a fiasco. I mean, that's another thing against the national interest, isn't it? Why would you give away, you know, that island and then pay to rent it back?
Like, look, again, there's various theories I have read online. People have come up with little bits of research. I cannot verify them, so I'm not going to repeat them, particularly when it's against some pretty senior legal figures. You don't take them on. But if some of the things I've read are even 20% true, they are deeply, deeply alarming. Steve, thank you ever so much for your call. Let's catch up now with Grace in London. Hi, Grace.
Hi. I'm really concerned about people in China who are being horrifically exploited, particularly in the production of some of the things that we buy, or people who are being sterilised on the basis of their ethnicity. I see that Starmer's excited that we might be able to sell some whiskey. We might be able to travel to China without visas for 30 days, but he's supposed to be a Labour Prime Minister. He should care about exploitative labour.
No, exactly. It's funny that he conveniently forgets principles, doesn't it, when it comes to certain, particularly communist countries. They can do no wrong. And you're right, you know, some of the things you hear reportedly coming out of China, the workers' camps, not just the persecution of the Uyghurs, who have to go to these sorts of facilities where apparently they're forced to sort of do hard labour and undergo brainwashing. I've even heard reports that China is enjoying a marvellous production of organs that have been harvested. For crying out loud, these are no small matters. This is utterly horrifying stuff.
It doesn't bear thinking about. Yes, I've seen that from several sources. It's just, yeah, it's beyond words. And I mean, he likes to say that he supports British values, but a British value that we have is to recognise the humanity of people. I mean, it's really despicable that some people from our country were involved in the enslavement of people from Africa, but we rightly then fought against the slave trade. And that's something good about our country's history, because people like William Wilberforce thought, you know, these human beings are creations of God who deserve to be treated decently. And yet now there are human beings being enslaved, and Starmer's just going and shaking hands with the leader of their country.
Do you know what, Grace? I cannot fathom it whatsoever. But interestingly, because I know you're a believer like me, China is the place with the fastest growing number of people becoming Christians. Did you know?
It's hard for there to be figures gathered on places where there is severe persecution, but I was aware that there are more and more people turning to God, yes, and it's fascinating. It's interesting how, even though it's really not in some people's interest if they're being persecuted, still they want to turn to Jesus, which I think is very interesting.
God often knows where he needs to go and do his work, that's for sure. Grace, thank you ever so much. It's always a delight speaking to you, and God bless, my darling. Right, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the things we've been talking about today. Dawn says, does it mean that Muslim women will have to wear a burkini in the women's pond as they can't be sure there isn't a man in the pond? I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that, you know, we're going to see this play out in the Green Party. How much do LGBTQ rights and the Islamist conversations go together? It's definitely shredded your party to smithereens, and fingers crossed it's going to do the same to Polanski's lot. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but it's into the crazy hour after this. We are going to start off fairly sensible. No, actually very sensible, because we're joined by the brilliant Rakib Ehsan, talking about how a convicted terrorist thinks he's going to be able to stand as a council candidate in Birmingham, of course. But then the gorgeous Samara Gill's going to be in the building, in that chair, and things are going to get wild. So don't you go anywhere. Three-fingered G&T. See you in a bit.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Well, she's here. She came in through the door in a sort of blur of beauty. The goddess walked in, put down her laptopy thing and her phone, and she's sort of just gone out again. But the Gill is in the building, which excites me incredibly because I just love that woman. We have so much fun. I hang out with her quite a bit. Sometimes she lets me sleep on her sofa. Now I live in the Cotswolds. So she's also my sort of like ad hoc London landlady. So I've got to be nice to her, don't I? But I'm so looking forward to broadcasting with her because I knew Samara first when I used to cover Kev on this show, and she was doing the job of Dean. Well, not doing the job of Dean because Samara can actually do her job. She's a brilliant producer. Dean, however, is just, I don't know, some sort of geezer who sits there and at least he entertains me. But now they've identified her as a brilliant on-screen talent, which indeed she is. She is going places, and I really can't wait to actually broadcast with her this final hour. But before we have all the fun, we've got to tick off one more serious story. And to do it, we're joined by my mum's favourite. She'll be watching at home and she is getting excited. I can hear her right now with her three-fingered gin and tonic, turning to that going, it's Rakib, quick, quick, turn the volume up, it's Rakib, it's Rakib. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Alex. How are you?
I'm good. She was talking about your hair the other day. There was something about the way you've changed your hair.
There's not much to talk about on that front, is there?
Well, no, not anymore. But she seemed to think that you'd changed your coiffure in some way. I don't know. She had seen things and said, tell Ricky. I can't remember what it was because I'm like, I ain't going to tell that man about his hair. But apparently I did.
Well, I hope she's doing well.
Oh, do you know what? I'll check my phone intermittently during the course of this because no doubt she will send a message at some point, which I can redirect to you because she just adores you. Honestly, if she could replace me for you, she would.
Well, that is something that's a huge compliment, I have to say.
You don't know what I'm like. I'm trouble at home. Now, talking about trouble at home, look at that segue. Let's play a clip of this man, because this man seems to think that he could be in for the running to be a council candidate in order to unite against the far right. You couldn't make it up. Let's have a watch.
In Sparkhill, alhamdulillah, this is for the side butt, and he is your candidate for the upcoming council elections in May. Make sure you throw your full support behind him because now is at a time to get rid of the Labour councillors here in Sparkhill and Birmingham.
Absolutely. For those of you who know us, know that we have been passionately working for our community. Me and Ahmed at the last general election stood for the parliamentary seat, and now it's the council election. That's why we have put our weight behind a candidate who has weight within the community. I urge you at the next May election, the council election, you must vote for our candidate Shahid Butt and also our other candidate who is Bilal Arabi, who couldn't make it here today. Over to you, Brother Shahid.
With the help of Allah, with your support and with these guys behind me, I know we're going to take this, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Remember that.
Do you know what? I'm beginning to rather like that weird Yaqub guy. He actually cracks me up, but he is no laughing matter. He actually came after me with some legal case, and I just threw it in the bin. But the thing is, he's actually quite entertaining. Remember that. But it's not funny. It's not funny because Shahid Butt, who says he wants to unify the people and push back against the far right, is a convicted terrorist who was actually jailed for plotting to blow up the British embassy. He had links to that good old hook-handed hate preacher Abu Hamza, and now he wants to stand as a candidate in Birmingham's local elections. Rakib, how? Where do we grow these people, and how serious an issue is this?
Well, I think first we have to make the point, Alex, and I've been making this point for some time, that Birmingham is verging on being a failed city. And it's quite remarkable because back in the day, Birmingham used to be the gold standard example of efficient local governance. And as you just see in recent times, all the problems it's experienced, I think it's a crying shame that our second largest city is in the state that it is. And for some time, it's been suffering from very intense forms of ethnic and religious segregation, and that's definitely fed into quite uncomfortable levels of Islamist extremism. And I think that that's the worry. I think that in some ways you see there are British Muslims who are engaging with British democracy, and some of them will engage as independent candidates, such as those in Birmingham. But I think what some people may be concerned about is to what extent do those independent candidates, do they truly have social cohesion at heart, or do they have more of a narrow and divisive agenda as opposed to one that many British people could get behind?
I mean, the thing is, that Yaqub guy, he does. Whenever I look at him, I can't help but chuckle because he is an entertainer. But he himself was at one point arrested on charges of terrorism. He has been accused of various things. He's a very litigious character. And increasingly, you have this idea of a Muslim vote. And I went onto the Muslim Vote website a while back, and they're endorsed by lots of other organisations which represent Muslim interests, some of whom appeared on the list that Michael Gove said should be prescribed, probably shouldn't be operating within our public services and within our democracy. And I wonder as well whether there could be ties to foreign funding to all of this. Because, yes, they make funny little videos, remember that, all the rest of it, ha-ha. Oh, isn't it great to have people from different faiths now wanting to engage with our electoral processes? But I think it's a lot more dark than that.
Well, I think what's really interesting, you mentioned the Muslim Vote there, and the Muslim Vote campaign has intervened in the Gorton and Denton by-election, which promises to be a very exciting one, the one that's going to be very tightly contested. I think you have Reform UK, the Labour Party and the Greens all have a realistic chance of winning. And they said that in the interests of punishing Labour, but also halting the scapegoating politics of Reform UK, it essentially urged British Muslim voters in the constituency to back the Green Party. And I think firstly there you have a campaign which is ultimately encouraging an entire religious community to vote ultimately on the grounds of their faith identity. Well, I think it's so interesting that it's ultimately encouraging them to vote for the Green Party, which, you know, Alex, in terms of social policy, is a world away from the sort of conventional Islamic social conservatism, especially on things like marriage, abortion, euthanasia, and a variety of social issues. So I think that what we're seeing here is that we have these sort of Muslim-specific campaigns, but I think in some ways the way they're instructing British Muslims in terms of how they should vote, how they should politically mobilise, it looks very confused to me. I know that we've had this Islamo-left alliance for some time. You had that in a way, and it hasn't worked very well with British Muslim voters and the Labour Party. And I think they'd work even worse. It would work even worse when it comes to the Green Party as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think with those two, it's a really sort of twisted marriage of convenience, where on one hand the Green Party think that they can garner a bigger voting bloc in the Islamic community. On the other side, some of these Islamists are using, let's say, a little bit of taqiyya here because they think that they can sort of coattail off the back of what looks like an acceptable electoral vehicle. Let's have a little look at my good old friends having a chat with Kevin O'Sullivan earlier on.
Do you think he's a proper person to become a councillor in Birmingham?
Well, Kevin, to be honest with you, the fact that you are relying on a country called Yemen and its judicial system, when it was in fact your same channel who was saying completely different things when it comes to situations with the Houthis. So I absolutely believe the innocence of Shahid Butt. He was in a kangaroo court at the time. Even Amnesty International at the time recognized that this was a sham trial, and these people were being vilified for being British citizens, because as you know, at the time there was quite a lot of political conflict with the British, and Shahid Butt unfortunately was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and in his naivety was sucked into something.
It's an interesting sort of element of application of the grievance narrative there, Rakib. And the problem is, these guys, he looks like a clown, that one on the left, old Ahmed Yaqub. That's why I find him so entertaining. But they are strangely very well versed in how to play the system, manipulate treaties and legislation. And I worry that they are now using democratic processes to try and I don't know what the right term to use is, to try and get their own way in Britain.
Well, I think that this is something that I've written about for some time. What we're witnessing is the rise of sort of UK-born, younger British Muslims who are relatively well educated, quite entrepreneurial and very tech savvy, and they're deeply politically engaged. And what's interesting, compared to many of their foreign-born elders, their parents and grandparents, who may have left countries of origin, which have been, there's civil unrest, rampant institutional corruption. Their elders had this naturally positive orientations towards British democracy, Alex. But when you look at younger-born UK British Muslims, they're more likely to identify as Muslim first. They're more likely to have greater demands of British democracy as well. So in a sense, you almost have that integration paradox, which is very interesting. So I think what we're seeing here is ultimately you see a very dynamic and entrepreneurial, a younger British Muslim generation coming up, and they want to make their mark when it comes to British politics at the local, regional, and indeed national level.
One thing that also seems to be a phenomenon, before I let you go, I keep seeing on my timeline, at the moment my algorithm keeps throwing me clips of Mohammed Hijab, who seems to be a pretty alarming character, who says all sorts of things which to me sound like outright threats and outright incitements. Seem to me, I'm not saying that they are, but he sort of fits into something else, another phenomena I've noticed, which are these sort of summer training camps, the sort of Muslim beefcake, the let's all go, let's learn to sort of, shoot some archery, lift weights and pray together. And there's part of me thinking, are these jihadi training camps?
Well, listen, I think that at the end of the day, there are, British Muslim communities where you will have younger men who are very disillusioned with their country. Now, there could be a variety of reasons for that. I think that the sort of political establishment's positioning, if you could call it that, when it comes to Israel, Palestine, definitely feeds into that. But I think that what's interesting is that what you're talking about there is that when you look at communities in terms of how dynamic they are, how internally cohesive they are, I think there is an argument that in some ways there are British Muslim communities, they have those strong networks of brotherhood, that social solidarity that might be lacking in other communities. So I think that is the very complicated portrait that we have now in modern Britain.
Rakib, my mum's favourite. I was just checking my phone to see if she's sent a WhatsApp to pass on to you, but clearly she's not watching tonight because it'd be the first thing she'd do. I can't believe it. She's missed out, Rakib. She'll be kicking herself. Anyway, thank you ever so much, my darling. It's always so great to have you on. Hello.
Hello. Oh my God, sorry. I was just like marveling at Rakib. He is the mother's favourite choice, isn't he? I mean,
he is the mother's favourite.
Everything he says, I'm like, yes, you're completely right.
Doesn't every mother look at a Rakib in this world and wish someone like that for their daughter?
Totally
just a really
correct.
Sort of nice academic, sort of, good soul, good spirit.
I don't think I could keep up with him intellectually, though. Like, if only I was at his standard, he's just up there, and I'd be like, oh well.
he's just such a joyful creature. He's just so nice. He's got so much integrity.
Love that man.
He's like proper man, like family man. He's not one of those man babies.
They don't make them like Rakib out there.
They don't. Also, they don't really make them much like that Ahmed Yaqub either. Which I know we shouldn't laugh because this man does not mean nice things. He kept sending me legal letters at one point, and they were sending them to both me and Richard Tice, and it actually did give me a real knot in my. I got so worried about it because I've never been served with legal papers before,
one
ever.
likes a legal letter.
And I was like really, really worried about it. And I phoned up Richard and I said, have you had these papers? Well, and he just burst out laughing. He thought it was the funniest thing that's ever happened. And I was like, oh, so I shouldn't be worried. And he's like, no, it doesn't matter.
Well, isn't he a barrister, or he claims to be?
At least I thought if we ended up in court, Tice can pay. Right. But it wasn't funny because they have this sort of solicitor's firm which sounds like it's got a really sort of nice British name. Like
it is. I've called them many
Morris
times.
Collins or something. I don't know what it's called. But then he's a funny one, but he's funny like funny. But the problem is he's also funny. He does make me laugh. He's like a caricature.
I completely agree with you, and he represents, as you were saying and talking about with Rakib, this really interesting new wave of sort of Muslim influencer. Like he's very big on TikTok. He's very big on Instagram as well. And what's interesting is his hatred for Labour and his hatred for their policies and different things like that. He almost, sometimes I see him and I'm like, wait, that's stuff that we're saying here on Talk, or, you know, some of the presenters would say. He's kind of, it's this weird divergence, and I think we're seeing it more and more with these independent councillors.
Yeah, it's funny because someone who I strangely have developed a decent communication and relationship with is Dilly Hussein from Five Pillars. Now, he's one of these Islamist influencers. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying that, because he says to me, yes, I am an Islamist. I would want to see... But he's always... Sometimes he'll message me and just say, how are you? How's your family? Is everyone keeping well? He'll ask me a question about Christianity, or we'll just have a really nice dialogue. And I say, just taking my daughter to school, just doing this. We sat and did an interview together, and it was a very sort of interesting, thoughtful interview. And I've always thought, he actually seems like one of the good ones. And then he'll pop up on my timeline talking, extolling the virtues of Afghanistan because there's no alcohol, you can't hear music, women aren't in education. I'm like, whoa, like, what's going on? Which is the real person? I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot. I mean, I've spoken with Dilly as well quite a lot off camera, and he's such a nice guy, you know.
Educated, polite, a brain that works really quickly, and born and bred here. And you think to yourself, someone like him could have become a Rakib.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well,
and instead it's sort of banging the drum for the Taliban.
Well, there's that, totally. And, you know, the work that they do at Five Pillars is very interesting, I will say, journalistically. But I think, you know, there's space for that. I'm a big proponent of free speech. Go for your life. But I agree with you. I think there is an indoctrination element that we do need to really think about here, because it's actually those second generations. I've written extensively about it. The second generations that can be more extreme and more with the... they get very wistful about the homeland. You know, they start to think about things that how bad the West is, because they're not quite Muslim enough for their own communities, but they're also not quite British enough for the British community, or at least that's how a lot of people feel.
I always think something quite enticing, actually, about for young men especially, about becoming a Muslim, because it is like a brother, they're like, alhamdulillah, blah, 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 you know, shaking their hands, brother, oh, brother, look at me, drinking my non-alcoholic BL, brother, you know, I've got 5 wives. You know, I always think, and, you know, and I don't mean this against all Muslims, but there's elements of the Muslim faith, or the way that certain groups practice it, which is a bit gangstery. You know, it's like being in a cool boys club. I should see if I could get Dilly on here one day, because one thing I actually respect about Dilly, and like I say, he's always so lovely to me, and the kindest man when it comes to thoughtfulness about how are you and all the rest of it.
We should call him up.
He does actually talk quite openly. He doesn't sort of, you know, he doesn't play these games. He will say, yes, I'm a Muslim. Yes, I actually would love to see Britain become a Muslim country. Why wouldn't I? That's my religion. Yes, this is what I believe. And this is why my faith is working better than yours, because we're having loads of children while you're watching porn. And you kind of think, yeah, I agree with you, actually. Yeah, fair play. You've got a point.
You're completely bang on. I think it's almost a reaction to how scandalised the West has become, in my opinion. I mean, you speak about it a lot. It is this poisonous cocktail that we have right now, where, you know, Western countries have gone so far in the other direction with Pornhub, with OnlyFans, you know, basically anything sexual on tap. And
1 in 3 babies being aborted.
That's too. Craziness. Exactly. So that, and then you can see why, just as that, you know, evangelical Christians have also risen up in the same sort of way. So you can see, in a way, it's a reaction. It's a reaction to what's actually going on. So I can empathise sometimes with these people who go, okay, I just need some sort of home to place my values and somewhere to look up to and someone to look up to. And that's where these Muslim influencers, who, to be honest, a lot of them have very bad intentions, which are very money motivated, and they just want to spread the message and make a bunch of cash, just like a lot of other, it's not just Muslim influencers, there's a lot of influencers, religious ones that want to do that.
And they always end up realising, like Candace Owens, you've got to get more and more ridiculous to get the clicks. You know, you can't just be a normal person, because people can tune into sort of mainstream media. You've got to sort of get extra.
I was texting her like a couple months ago, and I was like, this is my old life as a producer, but I was like, are you okay? You know,
did she reply?
No.
She's probably... don't know.
Yeah,
it's
poor
weird
Candace.
how when people, it's because people always say to me, oh, why don't you set up a YouTube channel? Why not this? Why not that? I have a feeling it's quite difficult, and that when people are trying to find their niche and draw attention to them and then maintain that audience, it ends up being a slippery slope towards weird, which is this programme as well. Yay! So don't you go anywhere, because Samara and I are going to get the dial, crank it up to 10 out of 10 weird, and to start digging around in the strange parts of the media, including, I've got out just in case we might need it if we run out of things to talk about, just the Daily Star.
I love the Daily Star.
the Daily Star.
Yes.
It's the best newspaper
That's what
out
I actually
there.
want to read. Those are the stories I actually care about.
It's what it's all about. Not published in this building, so we're probably going to be in trouble.
Oh gosh, okay.
But it's
Well,
just
you know, I do flick to the Sun first. They also have the good stuff.
It's not this good though. It's not this level
No,
of weird.
it's
though.
better.
So
It's
nice.
better, Alex.
Oh no, the Sun's actually got news in it. This has just got joy. It's just, I don't even know what this is. It's like the Beano or something. Look, there's a picture of a dog with a thermometer and a towel wrapped around it.
I love how every day they will take whatever the actual headline is and just do something completely different on their front cover. It's pretty funny.
Apparently the nation's worst pizza crimes have been revealed. Wearing a hat will make you go bald. This is all the good stuff you've got to look forward to. Remember what you've got to do. 3-fingered gin and tonic. See you after this. I had drunk the Kool-Aid. I believed that doing more business with China was going to be good for both of our countries. As I got more senior in the government, I saw what a massive security threat China was. It was particularly under the Boris government. We were forced by the Americans, by the then first Trump administration, to rip out the Huawei components. And it's clear that China is trying to infiltrate our system. You know, we've had spies in Parliament. We've now had this spying scandal in Number 10.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Across.
Oh, we're just chatting away, planning our night out, sharing some information. We've realised that actually our assistant producer looks like the Boston Bomber.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, that's right. That's right, Matthew. We're talking about you. Yeah, I mean, seriously, you are the spitting image. I'm sorry, it's a truism. You can't help what you look like, but we found your doppelganger.
He is like he's a white British male from Camberwell, so don't worry, we're not profiling him or anything.
And I was saying to Dean yesterday, because Dean, like me, is a big lover of boy bands, and I was saying if he was going to be in a boy band in the 90s, he'd have been in 911. He was trying to upgrade himself to another level. And I'm like, no, mate, you'd have been in 911, the tribute act, in like the tribute act in sort of Basingstoke Town Hall. That's you. Although saying that, because I think Zach Polanski looks like a tribute act to the missing member of Hearsay.
I was watching the other day and you were calling Zach, what was he, is it Forrest Gump? Or his Forrest Gump run or something? Yeah, he's got Forrest Gump legs.
There's something funny going on.
I tell you what he is, probably, well, he was an actor, and I do think that he's still playing, he's still playing the role of a lifetime.
A hypnotist.
He's playing the role of a lifetime as leader of the Greens, that's what I think.
That is basically what's going on.
Yeah, industry plant, allegedly.
It shows how ridiculous and dumbed down the left wing of politics is, because they'll just say, isn't he wonderful in Heaven nightclub dancing? I'm like, who cares?
I'm really sick of people also saying he's got charisma, even people who hate him. It's like, oh yeah, love or hate him, but he's got charisma. No, he doesn't. He really doesn't. He hasn't got that on-screen presence, that camera presence. I mean, I've seen him public speak. He's like an awkward schoolchild.
He's so like,
yeah.
He's so sort of fourth tier.
Yeah,
if
very
that.
much. Well,
before we talk about things in Australia, because we are going to do that in a bit, I've just found the Brainbox quiz in the Daily Star.
Go on.
I have a feeling you're going to struggle with some of these British-centric questions, but let's see. Let's see how well she does, audience. There's 5 questions. How many do you think you're going to get right out of 5?
As I said to you, I think it's going to be my David Lammy moment. I think this is going to be brought up.
Now, which classic European quiz show was hosted by Henry Kelly?
Oh, come on. I can't do this.
Plus, it's from the 80s. You weren't even born.
What are you doing? That was 20 years before I was born.
Oh yeah, forget how young you are. It's vile. It was going for gold.
The look on Alex's face.
I know, always upsets me. Which Spanish club did Spurs recently buy Conor Gallagher from?
What? Who? Gallagher who? Don't you live close to one
it's all right. Old 911 knows it. Atletico Madrid or something. Look, he's helping you out. Which song starts with the line, on a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air?
Oh, Chris Isaac, Hotel California.
Not Chris Isaac, but right song, wrong
Hotel
person.
California, I don't know.
I'll give you a clue.
Oh, gosh. The Eagles.
Yes, there you go.
Yes, sorry, I like the Chris Isaac version.
There you go. You've got 1 correct so far.
Okay.
Now, what is the name of the actor in the picture?
Okay, go on. Show me this. What's happening? Who is?
Who's that?
Oh, that's Adrian Brody.
Well
big
done.
Crush
there you
on
go
him.
too.
Love a big nose.
And then here we go. Put away the calculator. What is 26 divided by half?
13.
Apparently, 26 divided by half somehow is 52. I don't know how that works.
No, this is a joke. Are you serious?
Yeah, I don't know how that works. I can't do maths either, because half of that would be 13, but apparently divided by half just sort of like makes it times by 2 or something.
Is that calculus?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty heavy lifting for the Daily Star, can I just say?
Is this some sort of baptism of fire that you do to all your guests, Alex?
No,
is this like
just
a humiliation ritual or something?
Just you, because you're too clever, too beautiful, too nice.
No, this is ridiculous.
I just have to bring you down a peg or 2.
I'm walking out. One more question and it's over.
Should we make things go Australian for you?
Go on. Make it a bit easier.
So your compatriot Holly Valance brought out a parody song. Should we have a little listen?
Keep it in my sheet, 'cause I gotta be another D. And I don't care what people say, I'll never be a him of them afraid. 'Cause I'm a real biological woman, a real biological woman. 'Cause you know I'm the original thought. I was born this way, it's in my DNA. I'm a real biological
woman.
Real diabolical lefty, a real diabolical lefty. Ideology, feeding hate in me. I'll intimidate, I'll indoctrinate. I'm a real diabolical lefty, a real diabolical.
Now that actually got to #1 in Australia's iTunes song charts. There must be a lot of sound non-woke Aussies about, not just you.
You know, I'm really surprised by that because Australia is so woke. I mean,
is it woker than here?
Massively.
No,
I think we're about 5 years behind. It's always the way. Sort of 5 years behind the UK, UK's 5 years behind the US type of thing.
Oh, so you can't be woker than here then?
Well, it's
I know, or maybe
rough.
it's because we've been through the worst of woke and now the fight back's beginning.
The
here.
fight back is, I mean, we've got Pauline Hanson, who's almost like a kind of Nigel Farage of Australia, polling very high at the moment. That was after the Bondi terrorist attack. But this is classic Australia. They're going to ban a song from Apple Music and Spotify.
Oh, it's gone. You know? It's been banned. It's been taken down.
Oh, yeah. They'll ban cultural figures. They'll ban people like Candace Owens from doing tours in Australia. They banned her ages ago, before she even became very controversial.
There's something very funny going on between Starmer and your man in Australia. What's his name now?
Albanese.
Albanese, that's it.
They are literally like that, by the way, in terms of how similar they are.
It's like literally, it's like, oh, we're going to ban social media for under 16s, we're going to do it too. Oh, we're going to make a big trade deal with China, we're going to do it too. We're going to try and get rid of X, we're going to do it too. They are literally, they're clearly on the blower to each other all the time.
I think they are. I mean, they even wear the same pair of like glasses. Lord Ali's probably providing the goods for both of them across countries. I mean, he's Albanese's kind of like a pound store
stands
version
for as seen on socialists.
Very good.
It used to be as seen on screen, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was supposed to be like,
yeah, exactly.
So it's like as seen on socialists.
The banning of social media for teenagers. I was actually at a press conference with Keir Starmer, and he was talking about how he's on the phone all the time with Albanese about that. Clearly. And how they talk about it, you know.
And I think Mark Carney. But Mark Carney, they're like, pull him into certain things. Other things he's like, no, I'm going to go my own way. But he's definitely part of that weird clique.
Yes, and the love for China is very much with all of them. I read your great piece on Substack where you kind of get into that a little bit.
I love having a Substack because I really get gnarly. I research hard for that. It's not like this bit of the show where it's just talking absolute rubbish.
It's a bit scary though. It's a bit scary. You know, you hear Mark Carney say our relationship with China is part of a new world order, and then you see Albanese and Keir Starmer sort of going together and looking at policies and trying to mould everything in this weird, very globalist way.
At one point, Australia was absolutely terrified of China, terrified, which is why they ended up buying their submarines from America and the US, not the French, because they're like, well, we've got to be able to beat the Chinese with these. And all of a sudden, Albanese's like, oh, here you go, have some land.
Yes.
Set up some atolls in the Pacific, go for it.
Yeah, it's almost like we're selling ourselves down the river and we actually think, oh, China's giving us a great deal. No, they're not. They will never give us a better deal than they've got themselves. And I think this trip that Starmer's taking, I know our audience doesn't care too much about our relationship with China because the Chinese are very silent people and how they kind of...
Well, most of our interactions with the Chinese in the UK are extremely positive, you know. They're sort of, you know, great food and Chinatowns are amazing. And if you've been to school with Chinese pupils, they're normally the ones who end up in Oxbridge and, you know, they don't seem to be sort of, you know, parading in the streets or moaning about racism. So on the outside, you just think, oh, well, you know, what's wrong with China then? They seem rather innocuous, but the ruling party, that's a different bloody glimmin'... Sorry.
Well, but that's the word for it. That is innocuous.
Was he paying attention then? I don't know, I wasn't even listening.
Innocuous is genuinely the word for it. I mean, if you think about the Russian oligarchs who came to London, they started buying up different football stadiums, properties, you know, being really loud. China owns much more of London than the Russians do, or even many other countries.
It's when you look at the statistics of how much critical infrastructure they own, that they've invested in. It's pretty much all of it, which is why we can't upset them now, because they'll just like, oh, did you like having electricity, did you?
Yeah.
Bye!
Totally.
So
they lay low and they infiltrate. So I know it, yeah, they're not as loud and proud as some of the other religions and different people that come into the country, but I think we ought to just keep a sort of eye on them and look at how they're changing the dial.
Out of interest, going back to what we were talking about before, what is it like in Australia now in terms of demographically? Because my sort of exposure to Australia was through the lens of 1990s Ramsay Street. So in my mind, everyone's just walking around with surfer hairstyles and saying, "Good day, mate." And the scariest person you'll find is like Stonefish. He's sort of like doing up an old car and you know, have his ear pierced and is going to do some sort of, you know, handbrake turns in a car park. But then what we saw with Bondi Beach is, wow. I mean, have you got parts of Australia that are like Birmingham, or is it not that bad yet?
Yes, there actually are parts of Australia, definitely parts of Sydney where obviously that attack happened, that are no-go areas.
Really?
Yes, you absolutely, if you are not part of the faith, you know, the Muslim faith, then just don't bother going there. It is really like that. I feel like the geography of Australia has allowed some of these communities to become really ghettoized, and it's not, I'm not saying that everyone in those areas is terrible or anything like that, but I don't think it's right for communities to be siloed off. I think we need proper integration, which Australia was really good at. They were actually really good at getting very small numbers of immigration and saying, if you're here, then you're on Team Australia, we're going to assimilate you and you're going to be part of this country and welcome. I mean, Australia, I have to say, it's a country full of immigrants. We came all on boats unless you're Indigenous.
Yeah, and by the way, the audience probably don't know this, but Samara's a secret Indian.
Yes, I am.
Samara's dad's actually Indian.
My dad dad is fully Indian. Thanks for the nose, Father. I really appreciate it.
Definitely thanks for the whole face, I'd say. Don't just stop at the nose.
No.
You've done good, girl.
I more say thank you for the massive nose, but that's a whole other thing. But my dad also came as an immigrant. It's a country of immigrants. I'm not going to say, immigration's really bad, but Australia did it properly in the beginning. I think now we're reaching levels of unfettered immigration. But you know what we don't have? Illegal immigration. We stopped the boats, Alex.
You did. Oh, if only you could bring that here. Tony Abbott. I mean, he's knocking about in the UK, isn't he? Our
He
Tones?
is. I think he's trying to preach the good word and, sort of spread his sermon across the country.
Do you know him?
Yeah,
of course you do. You know everyone. It's like
he's my uncle. No, he's. I feel like he should come on this show.
That's what Dean just said in my ear. I'm just being like Chinese whispers.
He's a massive fan of yours. He's actually texted me about you.
No.
Yes, he's a big
Boys,
fan.
we got to get him on there.
Well, I think so.
Tony, if you're watching this, if you are that big a fan, then you will be. Come on, we want to know how to stop the boats. Come sit there, tell us.
You know what was interesting about Tony? He was literally the devil incarnate when he stopped the boats. There were people absolutely rallying. Oh my God, we're not going to have any human rights. You're the devil. Remove you from office. What are you doing? It's a violation. You're locking people up who come to this country. You're processing them on another island, which is what we did. You couldn't even believe the backlash at the time. But he stuck by his sort of morals and how he wanted to go about it, and he really did stop the boats in 1 week with Operation Sovereign Borders, and it's something that genuinely Australia should thank him for, because we don't have this community tension that we have over in Britain.
Right.
We don't have that exact issue because we're not second guessing the immigration status of anyone.
Right.
We do know that people that are there legally.
Well, that is a start at least. Right, we're going to take a short break now. But hey, coming up, we've got fisticuffs, bus drivers, exorcism. Who knows? A bit of necromancy. There you go. Our very favourite Boston bomber doing the APing was talking about necromancy just yesterday, and here it is in the press. That man, you never know quite how far Matt's skills, how far his tentacles reach. I wonder if he planted this story himself. Maybe he is the necromancer. Who knows? He kind of looks like he could be. We love you, Matt. Right, we're taking a short break now. Sorry, Compliance Claire, don't report me to HR. We love Matt. Anyway, we're going to take a short break now, and we're going to try and keep you entertained all the way through till 10 o'clock, so don't go anywhere. Three-fingered gin. See you in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. I was just sharing with Samara some of my other secret skills. I've just written a song, like you know, about the producer Dean. I don't think I can. I've just sung it to Samara, but no, there's too much in there that Ofcom aren't going to let us do. You're just going to have to know that it's amazing, but you're not going to get to hear it. Never mind. Like, you're not going to get to hear that masterpiece by Holly Valance, the Alex Phillips song about Dean the producer. Will never, ever be released. It is such a shame. Talk about things that hopefully will be released. What about the devil incarnate?
Oh, you mean... well, we see many in the media. There are many cropping around.
Apparently, they're
like, which one?
Apparently, they're creeping around NHS trusts as well, because an NHS trust has had to call in an exorcist after staff reported seeing ghosts, including a girl in a red dress at a hospice in Norwich. Employees fear that it was previously a children's hospital. They fear it's being haunted by spirits because there's been a series of paranormal incidents. Now, they've taken this very, very seriously. Because what they've actually done is phoned up an exorcist known as a deliverance minister, who apparently are still round and about at large, employed by the Church of England.
Okay.
Are there to rid places and people of evil spirits. I actually love this. I'm obsessed with stories about hauntings, ghost stories. By the way, if you've got a ghosty story, if you, I don't want made up ones, I mean genuinely, if you've had like pots and pans fly across your house, hands coming out the wall, legless Roman soldiers marching through your cellar, your dog suddenly barking at things and going mental, it's got to be good though. I don't want low-level stuff. I want proper, harrowing, spine-tingling, scary stuff. You know what to do. 03444991000. Share. Do you believe in ghosts?
I don't. I beg the audience to call up and make me believe, because sometimes the people that have delivered me with these stories, I don't believe them. I think it's more of an issue with the people that I've heard from. But I've got one question. Did the NHS Trust use taxpayer dollars for this exorcist?
One would imagine so. I don't imagine that they went and, sort of shook a charity box in the street.
It's like, sorry, what are they doing? This is ridiculous.
See, I do believe in ghosts.
Do you?
I've never had one.
Have you had an experience?
No, and I don't want to, because I get obsessed with listening. My podcast choices are of the niche variety. And I don't like promoting things that the BBC do, but Uncanny is so good.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's a guy called Danny Robbins. I love Danny Robbins. He always wears like jumpers with cosmic cats on. Also, he looks a bit like Matt. Matt looks like everybody. But Danny Robbins
Matt's
hosts this
devil shapeshifter. Anyway,
I think Matt is a shapeshifter. but Danny Robbins does this podcast called Uncanny, and it's people sort of not phoning up. He goes and interviews them about their hauntings, and when you hear the whole stories, and there's very sensible people. There is this one, I think it was the very first one ever made, and it's two people who are now top scientists recounting the things they experienced at university, and they're both top of their field. They sounded extremely sane, and when you hear all of these stories put together, you're like, there's something in it.
Interesting. I feel like I was such an imaginative child, and anything like a shadow or like a cloak on a sort of doorknob or something, it would stress me the hell out. So I kind of chose to shut the door on that. But if anyone can actually change my mind, that's my challenge. I agree with you. I think if those people are recounting having supernatural experiences.
When you hear people who've actually had a poltergeist, or people who've had these sort of strange experiences, and they sound very sane, very normal, and you try and slice and dice of how could this have happened otherwise, to me, look, my thing is this, right? I think the more sort of, I'm going to sound like such an arrogant person now. Oh my God! I was going to say, I think the more intellectual capacity you have, the more capacity you have to believe in things.
That's probably why
Because there's a lot of people who just go, no, science doesn't exist. Whereas I always think that when you look at any period in history, science is never set. What we understand about the world is always 0.01% of what the world may or could be. In the medieval period, they're like, oh yeah, Earth's flat. Well, we found out it isn't. Then it's like, well, the sun goes around the Earth. Well, now it doesn't. We know that. And so when we ever go, this is what we believe and this is what we know, it never is. It's always a movable feast. And so I always think that everything is possible.
Yeah.
Just because we can't understand it, because human beings are just apes with a little bit more intelligence. I just think that anything is perfectly possible.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, actually. I mean, I definitely believe in the spiritual side of things. The spiritual side. You're making me come around, Alex.
What's a ghost? Yeah. There's a lot of exorcisms actually in the Bible.
Would you have an exorcism?
Well, if I was filled up with ghosty, ghouly demon things, yeah.
Really?
I'm not going to want to go around with swivel eyes and join pro-Palestine marches. Get that out of me.
Would you go and get hypnotized?
By Zach Polanski? Yeah. What, could I look more like you?
Oh my God. I don't think I have that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Someone else said that I had a nip slip on air earlier. I don't know why, but anyway.
I love this. You know, if that was happening right now, our numbers would go viral.
Oh no, I think people would need therapy.
Rise.
You wouldn't want to see that. That's not a good sight.
All I know is that the message board is about to go wild. By the way, somebody said, let Samara know that I believe I saw her when she was in Melbourne just before Christmas.
Okay.
In Camberwell.
Oh my gosh, who is then it was definitely
I would have
me.
said hello, but I was eating lunch in a cafe with the family. Love the show. The name, they haven't given their name, but it comes up at the top as Catherine J. So I think it is not some sort of creepy man who, you know, heard on the radio that you're going out there and sort of waited at Heathrow, like looking like this at all the Australian flights.
I mean, I'm pretty desperate. Like, I'll take whoever's waiting at Heathrow for me.
That's why we're going out there after this.
If it's a free ride, I'll probably take it. I mean, you know. That's lovely. Oh my gosh, wow, there you go, Australian listener. No, that was definitely me. That was probably me crying into like some sort of meal.
I love weird small world stuff. I love it when you suddenly sort of find these connections, and especially when the international things, you just go, that's really odd.
Will you travel around? Do you get recognised? Because you're uber famous.
You know, one of the places I got recognised the most was Lanzarote. In the seafront. They're my people.
Yeah, you are down with your people.
They're my people. Oh, anyone in Playa del Carmen, is it Puerto del Carmen? Playa del Carmen's in Mexico. And anyone in Puerto del Carmen, they're as Dean and I'd say, they're sons.
Well, Dean's keen to do the show from there. Whoever text in if you're from there, we could do a live.
Yeah, I actually think that's. By the way, hold on. This is an emergency appeal. On behalf of Talk, if you are a bar owner in Lanzarote who would like a little bit of glamour brought to your premises, a little bit of stardust, and would happily provide the technology and cover, probably the accommodation too, because they're a bit tight-fisted here, for a live broadcast from your bar in Lanzarote with me and Samara Gill, then please contact the programme 0344499 1000, and Dean will pick up your message and organise it, because wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, it would be.
Live from Lands.
Yeah, I love that.
I love
anything is
Lanzarote.
possible, as you said, Alex. Anything is possible.
Anything. You don't ask, you don't get. So I think this is brilliant. Also, by the way, if you're not in Lanzarote, but somewhere else which has a sun in the sky right now, who wants to host us, well, we won't be picky. We'll take it. In fact, aren't we doing our next Talk Women from the pub round the corner?
Yes, I think we are. So if you are around, come down, come say hi, come be on the show.
I will be there. I thought I was on the show normally. I was just on holiday. Calm down.
I was doing a shout out
to the people.
Yeah, to the people.
I thought you meant me.
No. Oh my God. If you're around, Alex.
Okay,
no.
now we talk
you know how much we missed you on that show. You're like the integral part. Without it, it's like driving a cart with literally one wheel.
Now we're talking about needing to go out because, you know, we just want to like have some fun, and we say, oh yeah, come on down to the Horse Show Inn on Tuesday. I don't know what we're inviting. We might actually need one of these Church of England exorcists around the place. We could be all sorts of demons could come out of that Pandora's box. Right, we've got to take another break before we close up for the night, so let's do that and come back for some more fun.
We understand that the Prime Minister and his team have all got burner phones, but
that's
not using...
standard practice.
Yeah,
that's every time you go to China.
Was your phone bugged, do you believe, by the Chinese?
Well, I have some evidence that my phone was interfered with, possibly not by the Chinese. When I was in the Foreign Office, I haven't heard anything apart from what I've read in the press about the Chinese specifically.
You haven't asked the security services yourself?
I haven't, no.
You have a security detail. I mean, with the Met, you know, surely someone could ask.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right, welcome back. I just want to say Catherine's message. I'm not creepy. I just enjoy watching Talk. Cheers, Catherine, with a heart.
Love you, Catherine.
Oh, we love you, Catherine. Tony Abbott was born in Britain. Bring him back. Perhaps Reform can have him in charge of the borders when Starmer flees to China. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was a Rhodes Scholar. He went to Oxford. He's a good man. He's
a great man. Did he wear budgie smugglers on a beach or something?
Budgie smugglers were present, yes.
Yeah, I
and he
remember
rocked them. I mean, he's got like a six-pack. These were the days. Now we've got some like sort of... Okay, I can't even say that on air.
Oh, no, go on, try and use your Ofcom compliant words. It's a bit like playing charades. Use Ofcom compliant words.
We have a sort of barrel-esque Prime Minister now that I wouldn't want to see in budgie smugglers.
A generously proportioned individual.
Yes, someone who enjoys a Lamington or two.
Who's not had the sort of generic makeover.
Oh, God, yeah, just get on the jabs at this point.
Just get on those injectables, son.
No, I'm joking. Honestly, Albanese's not bad.
Oh. Evening, Alex. Can I ask what Substack is, says Samantha in Lancashire? Yes, you can, because then I can shamelessly plug it. It's a brilliant site that is growing and growing and growing. It's where people actually write articles. You can do video interviews. It's basically your own little newspaper, if you will, or website, like a blog, but lots of other things. And so I'm free there to do all the research and write about any story I want in as much detail. And I actually love doing, here sometimes I'm just gabbing on about stuff, but I actually like doing the really sort of heavy lifting, gnarly research stuff. And actually talking about things that can't be done anywhere else. And I've done some big interviews on it as well. I've interviewed Nigel, interviewed Tommy Robinson. You do have to subscribe. You can subscribe for free, and then you get a whole load of content. Anything that's not behind the paywall. But every now and then I do have to put things behind the paywall because it's not great working for zero money.
Well,
girls got to buy stuff.
Well, this was quite an old one, but the Fabian Society deep dive that you did was one of the best things I've ever read. It was genuinely...
a while ago,
it's changed how I think about everything about Labour and all their policies and what they're doing and who's in positions of power. And I've seen many other journalists then jump off the back of it.
Yeah, no, I do try and get to places before anyone else on that.
Yeah.
If you do want to go on to it, the address is thatalexwoman.com. Same as my handles on social media, thatalexwoman.com. And Dean said, do a promo. I was doing a promo about myself. Okay, now we're going to promote some Talk stuff because Compliance Claire will be on the blower, won't she? Oh, we love her. Anyway, coming up on Tuesday, we are going to be filming in the Horseshoe Pub. Dean is running the whole blimmin' thing, so good luck. We won't get out of there alive. The man is a monster. He is a liver abuser. But here is the sort of stuff that we talk about.
Home Office did say, no, the rights of the asylum seekers are above the rights of the British people.
Shabana Mahmood is going onto these media channels and saying that she's been, engaging with communities, engaging with police. She's engaged with no one.
The latest is that Brooklyn could be set to sign a 7-figure book deal, and it's the same publisher as Prince Harry's Spare. That makes me shudder.
And Mel B wasn't there. Scary wasn't there, so I'm going to step in. I'm here. I'm ready for it. Nigel, I'm sorry. I'm joining the Spice Girls.
Do you know, I've got a little idea from Barbara in London, by the way, because you're out doing roving reporting now.
I am now.
And here's an idea for a special segment on Talk Women, please. Because Barbara in London said, Alex, we talked about the Hampstead Ponds earlier, so this message is from 1 hour ago, but I think it's quite apt for now. She said, Alex, the women should get together and yell at the trans bloke, show us your willy! And and hound them mercilessly. I would love to see Samara Gill standing outside that sort of female pond in Hampstead Heath, and every time someone with a beard comes by, just yelling that.
I would love to do that. I'm always at those ponds, and it does make me feel really unsafe that there could be potentially men in the women's only area. So I will happily go and do that, Barbara.
Sometimes you just think, how on earth did we get here?
Yeah.
And sensible people, like judges, journalists on the BBC, people with education, go along with the madness of like, oh, well, you know, Hamas aren't that bad. Oh, look at that gnarly man with gonads. That's a bird. Of course it's not. How?
Because their lives are so cushy. They're not on the front lines of this. It's just like with the illegal immigrant crisis. They're always placed into working class towns. In fact, with Crowborough, it was such a different situation because Crowborough is a little bit more posh and people are rising up now against that. But, you know, I spent a lot of time in Hillingdon, West Drayton, a lot of time in Braintree in Essex, and just seeing what they're having to deal with. I don't think any of those human rights judges have had to come face to face with an illegal immigrant that's not in a courtroom.
But what's weird is this sort of the inversion of the truth that's constantly happening. And I was just thinking, my next Substack, I might actually see if I can get hold of a really good psychologist. I like doing my own research, but it's always good to get an expert on from time to time. Because I once spoke to someone on the show here about how left-wing activism is actually performative narcissism.
Richard Grannon, yeah, that was a great
you booked
interview.
it.
Yeah,
that's right. It was when you.
Yeah,
I was doing the show. That's why she lets me do whatever I want when she's producing and gets really good guests
because
for
Alex
it.
knows the way. She is the genius.
But now she's out on the. I was going to say she's out on the streets plying her trade. She's out on those corners.
I'm on the street
with her fluffy, putting it in people's faces.
I am literally on the street corner making money now.
You are.
Oh, how the good have fallen.
Turning tricks for talk. That's how it goes. But no, it's in, you know, I used to often think, how could it happen somewhere like Germany that they all start doing Heil Hitler and kill the Jews? And then it's sort of like history works in cycles, doesn't it? And we find ourselves almost 100 years later. And in Germany, it was the academics, it was the journalists, it was the doctors, it was the teachers. It wasn't the sort of, you know, builders and bricklayers who were getting on board with all of this. Because it is about social conformity, about status. Humans don't like looking like they're the odd one out. It's quite rare. Like humans as pack animals don't like being exposed as not being part of the herd or at the top tier of the herd. And so whatever the top tier of the herd's doing, most people who envision themselves wanting to be there will blindly go along with it. And because they're doing it, they actually have to convince themselves of the narrative. They actually have to live with cognitive dissonance to the point in which they just sort of scrap the idea that what they're doing is mad.
Absolutely, and you can see with our academic institutions how they've been completely infiltrated, and I think that's a very smart move from the left-wing woke movements, because they know that that's where kind of all the people who then go into positions of power start off with. I mean, I was just talking out there to someone who's just